Welcome to episode 15 of Northern Lights, the online chat show which focuses on football in the north and northeast of Scotland. My name is Martin Johnston, and each week I'm joined by our resident journalist and fellow Rothisloon, Dave Edwards. Also joining Dave and I each week are three well-known names from North football, both from the past and the present. Just a few guys reminiscing about the good old days and from time to time giving a distant opinion on the modern game. A bit like Soccer AM meets the Antiques Roadshow. Yes, welcome to the first of our new time slot on a Sunday night. Our first guest spent an incredible 17 seasons with Keith FC. Derek Nicol's Highland League career started with Cove Rangers, but when he signed for Jim Hamilton's Keith in 1995, he started a long and happy love affair with the Kynoch Park club. Derek would go on to pick up 2 Highland League Championship medals, along with 9 other cup-winning medals, and scoring 200 goals in 582 games along the way. Welcome to the show, Derek Nicol.
Thanks, Martin. Nice to see you. Nice to see you guys.
Evening, Derek.
Evening, Dave.
Derek.
Good stuff. Nice to see you, Derek. And I'm going to start off, Derek, by you can tell us a little bit of what the last 4 months has been like for you, because you have been working all the time and you've been working in Aberdeen Royal Infirmary and your job as a physiotherapist. I imagine it's been pretty stressful, Derek, but you're looking well and you've obviously come through it pretty well.
Yeah, it's certainly been different. I think it's sort of middle end of March, things changed quite dramatically with obviously with the COVID stuff. The hospital moved pretty quickly, changing things, and you know we had to follow suit. So as well as treating the patients with COVID, we had to try and keep up with treating the patients who didn't have COVID, because there was still a lot of patients around then as well. But yeah, I was in the thick of it with the sort of the intensive care and the high dependency unit and the respiratory wards, which we're seeing sort of mostly the most severe cases, I suppose. My wife, she's a nurse in the high dependency as well, so we were both, you know, right in there in the front line, and you know, it was challenging, it was stressful, but I think we were very fortunate to still be going to work, and lots of other people didn't have that option, and you know, some of them maybe don't have that option to go back to work. So even though it was stressful and, you know, different and things like that, hopefully we're sort of coming out the other end of it now. So. But yeah, it was a busy time, but hopefully we don't see that again.
I'm sure every Highland League football fan, Derek, would like to thank you, and indeed your wife and all your hundreds of colleagues, for the sterling work and the bravery you've shown. Well done indeed, and thanks very much for joining us in the show.
Thanks for that, Dave.
Our second guest has played for a number of Highland League clubs and is a well-known character in North football circles. Jim Oliver started his Highland League career with Brora Rangers, and he went on to have spells with Ross County, Fraserburgh, Inverness Thistle, Rothes and Clachnacudden. Jim also saw service with Dundee United and Montrose, and had a spell south of the border with Wigan Athletic, plus a venture across the sea to Hong Kong with his half-boots will travel policy. There's never a dull moment when GO is on the go. Welcome to Northern Lights, Jim Oliver.
Thank you, Martin. Nice to be on, and nice to meet the lads and have a wee chat earlier on.
Good to see you, Jim. You're looking well.
Jim, good evening. Lovely to see you, my friend.
Hi, Dave. How are you?
I'm okay, pal. We used to meet often at Grant Street Park.
Yeah, I think we met first up at Fraserburgh, I thought.
I think we did. That wasn't yesterday, Jim.
Yeah.
Now, you talk about Fraserburgh. How would you describe Belsley as a ground for playing Highland League football? I've always thought it's an intimidating atmosphere for opposition players. What's your feeling?
Yeah, it was. I loved playing there, and you know, and obviously went back there to play with other clubs against Fraserburgh, and always got a warm welcome and fantastic people at the club there. So it was just a brilliant place to play football.
Mm-hmm. I would describe your style of play, John, having seen you, Jim, as swashbuckling.
Well, maybe in the past.
No, but in the past, swashbuckling, I would say.
Yeah, I enjoyed mixing it with some of the boys back in the day, the big John Steve Wright and Frank Rukowski, Wally Lawson. It was great to have a wee friendly match with these guys back in Derby.
Yeah. Well, friendly is the word. And Jim, we're delighted to see you here tonight and looking so well.
Thank you.
Our third and final guest this week had a football career straight from the pages of Boys' Own magazine. Highlander John McGinlay first plied his trade with local team Fort William, then in County, before playing for a number of clubs, including a 3-year stint at Yeovil Town. After a brief return to Highland League football with Elgin City, John was soon heading south, and after spells with Shrewsbury Town, Bury and Millwall, before joining Bolton Wanderers, where he played for 5 seasons and where he now holds legendary status. During the same time, John also represented his country on 13 occasions, and he is remembered for that famous goal against Sweden at Ibrox in 1995. A very warm welcome to John McGinlay.
Good evening.
How are we doing, John?
Good, thanks.
John, nice to see you. You're looking well.
Looks deceive, Dave, I'm telling you.
Well, it all started for you, John, at the Claggan Park. What a wonderful place to start your football career, the most scenic ground in British football.
No, and a fantastic place, you know, when it's not flooded, when it's not underwater, when the games are on. No, it's a special place, it really is. And, you know, growing up there and playing there at the foot of Ben Nevis, it was something else.
Mm-hmm. When you were growing up as a young boy in Lochaber, John, did you ever dream that you would make a career in football, and an illustrious career in football, go on to score a really important goal for your country and have a magnificent career in full-time football?
I think everybody dreams about it, but actually to go and make it happen is a different scenario, you know. And I think, you know, growing up in Fort William, it was a shinty town. It wasn't really a football town. And at that time, when I started playing and I got into the Fort William team, they only played in the North of Scotland Cup and the Scottish Cup. The rest of the games they had were just friendlies. So in the back of your mind, you knew, you know, the likes of Duncan Shearer and that were up playing for Clach. You knew you had to sort of move to play, and that was the case.
Mm-hmm. And of course, your brother's a fairly decent footballer also, and had a great career in Highland football.
Yeah, Davey did really well in Highland football. So he came behind me and played for Elgin City. Later on, managing Huntly and doing very well there as well. And I'm a bit surprised, really, when he left Huntly that he didn't get back into the managerial game and get somewhere else. But no, Davey won a hell of a lot of medals in the Highland League and did really well.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll talk about him later on, and I'm sure we're going to go into your great career in great detail. And at the moment, John, thanks and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave.
So how are we doing, Dave? Golfing today, were you?
Didn't mention it, I was useless. Useless. It was always next Saturday.
Before we get any requests or questions on Twitter, you are in the luxury of your house at home, I take it just now.
I am, yes.
And you're not in a USA penitentiary by any chance. Just in a reference to your it's because you're a Rothas fan, you're wearing that shirt, I take it. Yeah.
Well, something like that. That's Banyan Golf Club in Hua Hin in Thailand. Do you know, Martin, I wouldn't have been here. I wouldn't have been here tonight because I would have been in Hua Hin in Thailand if everything had been A-OK. Our son was getting married this Saturday in Thailand, but unfortunately he's here, his bride-to-be is here, and everything's postponed till November 28th, so it's finger crossed for them.
Oh, well, here's hoping for them. Difficult times for everybody. View numbers, Dave, any update on the figures?
Yeah, we're still well over 900 per show, and last week's show has attracted, well, in the first 3 days it attracted over 800 viewers, which is quite astounding.
I wonder why that was. Was it because of your attire?
Pelly's beard.
Pelly's beard. Again, lots of questions. Was that a real beard?
I don't think so.
Well, the fact was it wasn't in line with his face. Any shout outs this week, Dave?
Yeah, well, I think maybe the two people that got our teaser last week, our heat scratcher, two people got it right. Stevie Shorten, Keith Ladd, but of course, Huntly cricketer, and a name from the past you'll know, John Campbell, a former Highland League referee.
Yes,
John Campbell got it right as well. There are two people, as far as I'm aware, that got it right. It's a pretty tricky one.
And for those of you who don't remember John Campbell, his father was a referee. Jim, you maybe remember Murray Campbell, referee from the past. It was a tendency that they asked you your name, not the other way around, though, Jim. So maybe the name means that. So enlighten us, Dave. Your heat scratcher last week. Your
scratcher. I'm sure Derek Nicol will know this one. Who is the only player in Highland League football ever to have won 6 Highland League titles in a row? There you go, Derek. Thinking cap on.
I think that must be Yates, sir. I think
it is Craig Yates. You're right. He won 5 in that great record-breaking Huntly team. He then signed for Peterhead the season after. And of course, the Blue Toon won it that year also. So Craig Yates is the only player ever to have won 6 Highland League titles on the spin.
Which is a great one for a pub quiz, eh?
It is. Pretty good.
Absolutely. Right, gents. Can you remember where you all were in 1980? I could just about tell you. Jim Oliver, you were at Montrose. John McGinlay, you were at Fort William. You'd have still been in shorts and at the school, Derek.
I'd have been on my school holidays, yeah.
Dave, enlighten us. What was hitting the headlines on this day, 1980?
1980 is an awful long time ago, Martin, but it was pre-season friendly time. I'll give you an example. Caledonian 1, Clydebank 6. There you go. Cali were humped at home by Clydebank, sadly no longer with us. A report on that by the legendary Bill McAllister, who was on with us a few weeks ago. And Bill also did a piece with the new Elgin City manager. Elgin City started their campaign, or their pre-season friendlies, with now I think it's a 6-1. It's a bit smudged here. Looks like a 6-1 home victory over Alloa Athletic. And Willie Grant said, the new manager, we must keep our feet on the ground. This is just a friendly.
The great late Willie Grant. Okay, guys, I'm going to kick things off. Derek, as a youngster growing up, you played your football, juvenile football. You were with which boys' clubs?
Yeah, I was started Cooter Boys Club actually, but how we got there was it was a bit of a path really. I grew up sort of rural Aberdeenshire in a village called Afford, and you know, a bit like some of the guys that have been on here before, that you know, you went out and kicked the ball about and went to the park, onto the streets. I had a twin brother, and an older brother, so ready-made half a team there. But no, you just grabbed the ball and was kicking it against something, or grabbing guys in the village and playing. The school setup wasn't good. I think this was post sort of teacher strike, I think, if I recall. You know, quite a small school, so there was nothing sort of structured from a school's football point of view. There was a local amateur team used to go and watch, Afford Amateurs. They just played up the road. So used to often go up and watch them. But I think the way we came about to join Cooter under 13s, we had some family down that stayed in Cooter. So our uncle and auntie and 2 cousins stayed down there. A cousin was same age as us. And my uncle sort of got involved with the boys club down there and just knew that we were kind of football daft, I suppose, invited us along, myself and my brother, and we ended up playing, well, the Cooter Boy Club, and our first manager was Stuart Milne, the recently departed Aberdeen FC chairman. So he was the first boys club manager that we had. His loon, Gary, he was the same age as us. He played in that team. I think he was probably captain because his dad was the manager. He did have a younger brother, Michael. I think he was a couple of years younger than us. But he would come to some of the games, and I think we kind of struggled about a bit in the juveniles. To be honest, we were up against, well, it was a real eye opener for me when you come out of rural Afford and kicking a ball about to playing against the juvenile teams in town. We got a fair few pastings, to be honest. We were, I think the team at around that time probably was the best was Deeside Villa. Cecil Singer was their manager. I don't know if you remember Cecil.
Yes, indeed, yes, yep.
Big character in the juveniles at that time, but he used to come to a lot of the Keith games, actually. He sponsored a lot of the games once I was up there. But he had a fantastic side. He had guys, well, Levi, he was in that team. Guys like Colin McDonald. There was a guy from our school, actually, our academy, Scott McDonald. He was on the other side. I think maybe Colin Milne maybe was in amongst that as well. And they were trouncing folk every week, to be honest. But loved getting involved. It was obviously a bit of travel every week to play the game, so the folks had to come and do a few miles and drop us into town and things. But loved getting involved in that. I think when we moved on under 14s, I think Stuart had I think he'd obviously a bit more things to do, a bit more important things to do, and it fell away a wee bit. And I think midway through that season, we hooked up with Dice Boys Club. I can't remember the ins and outs of how we managed to get to Dice, but me and my brother and my cousin, we all joined the Dice and played there. I think caught the end of under 14s, and then under 15s, 16s and 18s all with Dice. So with Bob Fraser was the manager under 15s. He was a really good manager. Again, continue to enjoy that. 16s was a guy called Alex Sanderson. So you moved through your age group, you moved different managers. I didn't really, if I recall right, my brother Colin, he did quite well in the 16s. I wasn't playing well. I wasn't enjoying it as much. I was later on. I couldn't see really. I was going a bit short-sighted. I was going a bit blind, so I couldn't judge the flight of the ball. I couldn't judge the speed of it. So it was apparent I wasn't playing, although I was scoring some goals and but then getting left out. So I was a bit hacked off a bit with under 16s. But got my contact lenses, got my things sorted, and then moved up to the 18s. I was swithering of whether to do it actually. But the guys at the 18s, George Anderson, Lenny Nicol, yeah, fantastic guys those were. I mean, we played 2 years in under 18s. You had a year with the guys who'd been there, and then you would become the senior 18s after that, so guys coming behind you. But George and Lenny were brilliant. Loved my under 18s. We had a reasonably good side. Again, we were up against, I think it wasn't a Deeside Villa then, I think it was Albion Rangers. I think it was the bulk of the same team that was cuffing us all the way through the juveniles. I think people, again, Levi probably gone by then, but on to professional. But guys like Craig May and Colin Milne was probably still there. I think his dad was heavily involved with that club. Who else? Well, Stevie Campbell, Ollie Campbell, his son's doing well at Aberdeen at the moment, Dean. So these kind of guys were we were up there challenging a wee bit in the 18s, but with a decent side then. Interspersed with the juveniles, we used to play as youngsters. I think I heard Martin Stewart speaking about this. In the summer, we would play in the upper Don side, or I think it's upper Don side, or just the Don side summer league. So it was great because you get to play with your mates. So we all played for a team called Caig, and we used to have some battles with Martin had, I think he told us a story about guys chasing guys off the pitch, I think, when he was on, and I actually messaged him and said I was playing that game, Caig against Kennethmont. So you really had your wits about you. You were kind of 15, 16, and there was obviously you had older guys who were looking after you, but anything went in those games. I think we were, even it was a Friday night or something. Some nights you were lining the pitch with bags of sawdust, and then you were all heading off to have a wee shandy after the game. So it was great. It was great fun.
Dave, is there anything you would like to add at this point, given that I've stolen your thunder and haven't followed my very own script?
Well, I just thought, up until now, I thought that Emily Sandy was the only famous person to come out of Afford. But of course, we've got Derek Nicol as well, legendary Highland League striker, oblique centre half. So, do you know Emily Sandy, Derek?
I probably left. She was probably after me. I think. I suppose from an Afford point of view, obviously I knew Charlie Ferris. He was around about the area. Obviously, he's been on your show.
And of course, Paul Payton, who played for Rothes, stays in Afford as well.
And just sort of 5 or 6 doors down our street was Paul Mathers. He was a goalie. Most of the time at Dundee. I think he was at Peterhead as well.
Yes,
Martin.
he did, yep.
So he was. I suppose we're scratching about for famous folk from Afford, to be honest. There's no.
Well, I was intrigued to learn that you said, when you said street, you actually said streets. So there's more than one street. So.
Well, it's a bit different now, but yeah, you did occasionally have to stop for a car coming by and stay at the pavement and then carry on your game. But no, it was great fun. The juveniles, we did. I think, if I recall rightly, under 18s, we did get thrown out of the Scottish Cup. We were up against a team from Dundee, I think. Can't remember their name now. Maybe it was Douglas Boys or something. So it was a bit of controversy. We played them down there at Dundee. I think we drew down there. So it was a replay up at Balgownie, and it all kind of kicked off. One of the boys' dads, I think it was Ian Humphreys, his dad, ended up coming on, and I think his boy had been taken late or some shocking challenge or something, so his dad just came on and started fighting with the boys, and then all the other dads came running on. So actually, I mean, that was probably 2 of the better teams in this competition that year, but yeah, we got thrown out along with them, so we never made it to any of the Scott Cup final or things like that. But yeah, great times in the juveniles.
Thanks for sharing those memories, Derek.
Okay, Dave, we'll go back on track now, shall we?
Good stuff. J.O., now, doing a research, Jim, I didn't realise that you were a goalie as well as a centre half and a midfielder and a striker. You played in a variety. You're very versatile, Jim.
Yeah, back when I was younger, I'd just have to play in goals because it actually my football didn't start in school until maybe I was in about primary 5 or 6. And it was all started off by going to a game in 1966, and I hate saying that year, but it was Ross County against Rangers, and it was midweek. And my father had a building business, and he gave all his guys the day off to go and watch it because he knew they weren't going to turn up anyway. So they all went to watch Ross County against Rangers. I think I got a day off school, went along. I remember sitting on this lad, Mick Spooch, his shoulders watching the game. and it was just the sense of occasion was fantastic. It was Victoria Park was absolutely jam-packed. I remember some Rangers supporters behind me, and they were having a laugh, just this young lad blocking their view, so there was a bit of banter going on. I just loved the whole occasion. And then I hadn't been involved in football. I just wanted to get involved after that, and went to school the next day, and the guys that were regularly playing football, I says, "Oh, can I get a game?" And they says, "Well, you can get a game if you go in goals," which meant usually bloody useless, so went in goals and just started getting into it. Loved the football, like everyone else. All the guys here that have been on the rest of the weeks. It's just, there's an enthusiasm for the game, and I just loved it from there. And then an important thing happened, maybe about 2 years after that. A lad, John Jackson, who he had played for Dundee United, he came to teach in our school, and he sort of took us all under his wing. And I came from the seaboard villages, which are 3 small villages in Easter Ross, Hilton, Ballantor and Shanwick, and we call it the Ross-shire Riviera. But we had a fantastic football team, a fantastic heritage from there. There was the likes of Richie Hart Senior, obviously his son, young Richard Hart, played for Ross County and Cally Thistle and Dundee. But also there was the Allen brothers, Robert and Albert, who played for Ross County and Brora. And their cousin, Jimmy Allen, was a goalkeeper who played for Swindon. And he played for Swindon for 13 years. And he left the Highlands as a 16-year-old, played for Swindon for about 13 years. And he was over 300 caps, 300 games for Swindon. And he's an absolute legend down in Swindon, because I worked for a company from Swindon and they all knew him. So that was brilliant. So from there, John Jackson sort of took us on under his wing, and he was brilliant. He became involved in all the football locally, and he got me playing for the village team when I was about 13, playing against men. And luckily I was quite a big lad when I was young anyway. And he just threw me in, and you're playing again. You get looked after by the guys in your team, but you learn to look after yourself as well. So I think that's what's missing a lot from football nowadays. Guys play against guys their own age when they don't learn to defend themselves or their bodies or whatever. So loved it. Then the first sort of structured football I got involved in was with Inver under-16s. And the guy who was the manager there at the time, Edwin Skinner, an absolute legend in Ross-shire for football, he is still looking after youth teams, and he's well into his 70s. So he's had an unbroken service looking after youth people. And people like that are just gold dust for small villages and whatever. So in the under-16s, we played the first year. I was there as I played 2 or 3 games and goals for them. I played for the school in my age. I was playing sort of centre midfield, which I think was probably my best position. But then when I was playing for the village team, they would throw me up front, where, believe it or not, I had a bit of pace back then. So it was fantastic playing for these guys, and the camaraderie, it was superb. And again, you would go to the pub and you'd hear all the stories of the guys they used to play with, and you'd sit there with your orange juice when they're having their beers, or maybe not. But yeah, that was brilliant. And again, I was playing for Inver under-16s, I was playing for the school, I was playing for my village team. And you'd be playing for Tains and Duthas, you might be getting 4 games a week. And you just couldn't get enough. And then at school, you'd be playing during the intervals, and just fantastic times. And yeah, I played in goals for that team that won the league and we're under 16s. Saved a penalty in the deciding match, so not against Joe Harper like Billy Eckert, but you know, you remember these things. But then the following year in the under 16s, I was pushed up front and I just started scoring and just couldn't stop. So it was, I'm doing the same for Tain St. Bethas in the North Caledonian League as it was at the time. We also had the guy who was helping Edwin with the Inver under 16s was Don McMillan of former Ross County in Aberdeen, Celtic, centre half. And he signed me on an S form for Brora Rangers. So Brora were my first time league team. And what happened was there's three of us from Tain. It was before the Dornoch Bridge, so you had to go way up around the Boner Bridge. So the time we were getting back, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I started falling asleep in school. So our headmaster wrote to Brora and said, look, you know, you need to let these guys go. So I went and started playing for Tain. But at the same time, Ross County were wanting us to come and train with them, and Ian McNeil was the manager, and he asked me to come and play a match one Wednesday night. And this is a Davy Hamilton story for you. Davy the dummy, as they called him, but it was just what a fantastic person he was. So this is my first encounter of Davy. So I was asked to come and play for Ross County Reserves. What night was it? Tuesday or Wednesday night. So just been eager. I got my dad to drive me up there. There first, wandered in. The old stand at the Ross County.
Looks like we've lost John. Dave, move swiftly onward.
We've lost, I think we might have, Jim's frozen. I'm kind of roasting here, but Jim's frozen.
14-year-old and walking in.
He's back, he's
back.
Here's Davy. Here's this shadowy figure coming walking towards me, and he just went, oh, as he did, and I absolutely shit myself, and I took off and ran. I ran away. So my first meeting with Davy was he absolutely scared the shit out of me.
We lost you a wee bit there, Jim, but for everybody that remembers in Davy at Ross County, they'll know exactly what the story is there, so there's no need to edit that. Get that in its entirety.
Okay. Yeah, so from scoring a few goals at Tain and in the under 16s, that got me recognised. Now, I'd never ever thought about playing full-time football, but I was told that Spurs, Leicester City and Ipswich Town wanted me to come for trials. So we got dates from Spurs to go. When I say we, it was Bob Bannerman from Tain, who ran Tain Football Club, and John Jackson. And they said to me, right, Jim, we've organised for you to go to Dundee United for a week, you know, just to see what a professional football team is like. But whatever you do, don't sign. Okay. So I'm away down. So the first morning at Dundee United for the trial, and they decide Jim McLean decides to have a first team against the second team. So 3 minutes into the game, second team get a corner, Graham Payne takes it, drives it over, I come steaming in and head the ball just before I hit Jackie Copeland, Walter Smith and Hamish McAlpin. And all four of us ended up in the net. So then Henry Hall scored a second one, and then I scored a third one, dribbled round Hamish, popped that away. So 3-0, then Andy Gray got pulled one back for them, so it was quite good playing against these guys. So anyway, back in for our lunch. McLean pulls me into the office. Wouldn't be the last time I was in his office, but he pulled me into the office and says, I want you to sign. I went, young boys in the Highlands, the grass got in my ears and everything. I says, oh, I'm not allowed to. What do you mean you're not allowed to? He says, so I've been told not to sign because I'm going to Spurs next week. He never spoke to me for the rest of the week. So that was my first taste of Mr. McLean. So I went down to Spurs, had a fantastic week training there. But what put me off was when I arrived down there, they said to me, get a taxi from Euston Station, keep a receipt and we'll give you your money back. So I paid the taxi, but I forgot to get a receipt. And into the office, and I said, oh, I got the taxi. I was told to, did you get a receipt? No, I forgot to ask. How much was it? I can't remember, it was £4 or something. And the woman says, that's ridiculous. It's only about half that. And I actually thought they were questioning me, that my honesty or integrity at the time. And it really knocked me back. A young lad from the Highlands, been so far away from home. And then it made me uneasy. But I really enjoyed the training. There was guys there like, well, met one of my all-time heroes, Alan Gilzine. He was there. He not actually playing for Spurs at the time, but he was there. And I've actually met his son since I'm a pros too, so it's what a top-end guy he was. And then there was Martin Chivers, there was Cyril Knowles, Steve Perryman, Alfie Conn had just joined them from Rangers, and there was Pat Jennings, the goalkeeper. We got shooting practice against Pat Jennings, and that was again just an experience and a half. And we I played for Spurs against a London Borough team, managed to get a wee goal. And there's another lad, Hoddle, got a goal that day, but no idea what ever happened to him. So it was brilliant again, you know. But then coming home, I on the train, sweltering, summer 75, I think it was 90 odd degrees and hardly slept. So in the train, Euston Station to go home, must be a 14-hour journey or something. Found this old car, you remember the old carriage, 6 berth, down the side you had the corridor. Found this place empty, you beauty. I mean, I'm going to sleep all the way home. Just about to pull out the station, 5 women come in. Anyone in here, son? I says, no, in you come. Where you from? Where you from, lad? I said, I'm from Inverness. Oh, we're from Wick. Oh, goodness sake. They never stopped talking. They never stopped talking all the way from from Euston to Ness. So I took a later train home from Inverness to Tame. I couldn't stay with them any longer. But that was Spurs wanted me to come back, but I've been put off. Bobby Robson at Ipswich, he wanted me down, and I think it was Gordon Milne that was at Leicester City. So I decided I wasn't going down to England. Jim McLean phoned my house on Saturday night. How did you get on at Spurs? And he probably knew that I'd turned them down. And I said, well, I've turned them down. And he says, well, I'd like you to come and join us. And I liked the guys there, John Holt, Graham Payne, Paul Sturrock. We got on fantastic with them. So it was, I decided just to go there. And then I went down with my mum and dad. And the guys from Tane, Bob Bannerman, said, remember, ask for a signing on fee? Okay, so just about to sign the form, and I said, oh, I've been told to ask for a signing on fee. McLean again, what? And he says, how much are you looking for? I've been told to ask for £200. £200, he says. Andy Gray got 70, Davy Mary got 70, and Graham Payne got 70, and you're wanting 200. Well, that's what I've been told to ask for. So I got it anyways. So at one point I was worth nearly as much as Dave Neary, Graham Payne and Andy Gray. So there you go.
Jim, thanks for sharing those memories. We'll go on to look at the rest of your career very shortly. But for the moment,
Yeah.
thanks for that, Jim.
Thank you.
John, you're at Fort William as a youngster, but you say they're only playing enough the Scotland Cup, they're playing the qualifying cup, and you maybe fancy a little bit more than that.
Well, at the time, I'd made my debut for Fort William away at Elgin City in the North of Scotland Cup. I was just shy of my 15th birthday, and I went on as a sub. It was tough, believe me. It was. I was playing wide on the right at the time. They played me in the right wing, and it was a great experience. And you look at it, Fort William were playing against other Highland League teams in friendlies, pre-season games, and etc. And a couple of years later, I went up and we played in Nairn County, and Malcolm Cowie was the manager, and I did really well in the game, scored a couple of goals, and after the game, Malcolm wanted to sign me. So it was done pretty quick. I mean, the people at Fort William were great. They didn't stand in our way. It was it was one of them things really. They saw your ambition. They wanted you to do well, and they knew the only progression was to go and play for a team that was in the league, and that was it. And got in there, and there were some fantastic players at the club at that time. In fact, Pelly was there. I played up front with Pelly. Pelly had just come back from Japan, and we had a good partnership together. But there was other players in there. Wizzy Dingwall was in there. Sammy Forsyth. There were some really stalwarts of the Highland League were in there and looked after me. They knew I'd come in, and pretty much put the arm around me, looked after me, and sort of nurtured me along.
You mentioned Malcolm Cowie there. Malcolm's a lovely man. See him every year when he comes home to visit his brother in Cullen. Did Malcolm have something to do with the fact that you landed up in New Zealand? Because he's been there a long, long, long time. And I think last year he got their equivalent of the MBE for his services to New Zealand football. Well,
it was kind of the other way around, to be honest. I'd been approached to go out there and play. And I mean, I was at the case. I would have went anywhere for a game of football, and it was really appealing because it was the sort of their top league, the national league out there in New Zealand. You flew to all the away games. It was really, for me, it was like probably the biggest I was ever going to get. You know what I mean? It was a great opportunity, but it was far away from home as well. So I'd gone out there, had a decent season, and when I came back, when I was out there, to be honest with you, I stayed with a guy called Alan Richards, who was a lovely man, very famous in New Zealand. He was a cricket commentator, and he was on the board of North Shore United, who I played for. And I stayed with him for the first few weeks when I got there, Alan. And, me and Alan were talking about the game here and there. And, Malcolm was moving out there. And I told him that. So really, it was an icebreaker for Malcolm when he went out there, because Alan then started corresponding with Malcolm, so Malcolm had a place to go when he was there straight away with the football. So that was good, and I know I was very successful there, Malcolm, as well. Yeah. And of course, when you came home, John, was there a move to Yeovil Town? Well, the agreement was that when I came back, if I came back to Scotland, I would sign again for Nairn County. And so that was the case. I came back and I had a really good, hit the ground running, really. Scored a lot of goals quite quickly. And I went down to Yeovil. Yeovil wanted to sign me. I went down there. It was on the recommendation of, I'd actually gone down to Sunderland for a trial and did reasonably well down there. And there was a coach at Sunderland called Cecil Irwin. He was a full-back back in the day, but he had also played for Yeovil Town. And when I didn't get taken on at Sunderland, he recommended who was managed by Jerry Gow, battling midfielder, tremendous player, played for Bristol City, Manchester City. And Jerry I got a phone call out of the blue saying, would you come down? And I was like, well, there was only 6 weeks till the end of the season. I thought, I'll go down and take a look at it. And I went down there, ended up staying for 3 years.
Yeah. Were Yeovil non-league at that time, John?
Yeovil were one of the biggest non-league clubs down in England. You know, their crowds and everything, and they were averaging about 2,500 for their crowds, and they were quite famous for their giant killing. You know, back in the days, historically, they had some big results against league teams, and it was good. You know, it was a big step up personally for me, and I think it was. I met my wife down there. I had my 2 kids down there as well, born in Yeovil. So you know, the place meant a lot to me.
Okay, we'll go further into your career in a short while, but for the moment, thanks very much, John.
Thanks, Dave.
Derek, you've spoken about your time with Cooter and Dice Boys Club. 1992, and a good friend of mine comes along, Dave Watson, and you signed for Cove Rangers.
Yeah, obviously the under-18s came to a finish. I think if I recall right, you know, I think I scored about 50 odd goals or something. I was playing up front with another guy from Peterhead, actually, Scott Reid. He was kind of a strike, but I think he went to Peterhead as well from Dice 18s. Just like to say that actually Dice are celebrating their 40th anniversary this week. I think Dice Boys Club. So I'm sure. Wish them all the best. There've obviously been thousands and thousands of boys through that, and girls now, I think, as well. And they've obviously had a bit of success with some guys going on to play at higher levels and in an extremely well-run club. So I was at a bit of a crossroads. You know, coming to the end of your juveniles, you're looking at, you know, wanting to continue playing, and I was starting university as well, and yeah, gets a call from Cove Rangers. I think Graham Midler was kind of the guy that was watching some of the games, and wanted to speak to us about coming to Cove. And I was a bit undecided, to be honest, to begin with. I didn't really know much about the Highland League. I hadn't really been to many of the games. I hadn't been involved or immersed in any of that kind of football. It was all kind of the juveniles, amateurs type of thing. So it was actually, you know, I think I was wondering whether that was a good move for me, maybe too big a move for me. But I think in the end, I thought, yeah, take the plunge, and Dave Watson signed me for, I don't know, 200 quid, 250 quid, I don't know, a bag of balls to Dice Boys Club, I think, in summer '92. I think I signed the same day as one of the guys that I played against quite a bit, Gareth Forbes. I think he was in the Albion Rangers team. Dave Moreland signed the same kind of day from Peterhead, I think he came from. Another guy, Ray Collins, he signed. We all signed kind of in the same day, actually. So yeah, that was me under Dave at Cove. But you know, I walked in. You know, I don't think I'd ever done a pre-season. You know, he just turned up and played. I mean, there was a bit of coaching, I think, with George and Lenny at the under-18s, but you know, you're 17, 18, yeah, you know, you can run all the time, but never too much on the pre-season side of things. So you know, I went straight into the deep end with the pre-season. It was like, you know, I was kind of out of my depth a wee bit. I was this lanky lad just come in, and I was looking back at the players that were there. You know, you had Archie McLean in goals, you had Tommy Forbes, you'd obviously Dave Moreland, Andy Patterson, Davy White, Graham Park, Dougie Baxter, Mike Megginson, Ray Ewell, and then they ended up signing Ray Stevens. So, you know, players of that calibre. You know, it was great for me to actually be training in that environment. and learning off them. And even though, you know, I knew I wouldn't play a lot, but even watching some of the games, getting used to looking at the standard, looking at the professionalism of Cove at that time. They were probably sort of early 90s into mid 90s. They were on the heels of the Calais, the Ross Counties, the emerging Huntly teams, and you know they were right up there. A great grounding for me, I think, to get me into the sort of Highland League standards.
One game you did play in was quite a well-known English Premiership club. Came up to Allen Park. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's right. So that was the first season actually. I think that was around about the November time. Cove had a busy weekend that weekend. They played Huntly in the qualifying cup final on the Saturday, I think, up at Borough Briggs. That was 92, I think. I can't remember if they got beat on pens maybe, or it was extra time. I can't remember. Anyway, but we're a much smaller team to play on the Sunday. That was Man United. So they were coming up to sort of officially open the floodlights at Allen Park. So they brought up a team on the Sunday. Now, obviously, a lot of the guys were playing on the Saturday. So that was fortunate for me because that meant I could start the game against the Man United team, which was kind of littered with a few well-known names. So people like, well, obviously Brian Robson was playing, Steve Bruce, Andrew Kanchelskis, I think had just signed for them. He was playing. Brian McClare, Lee Sharp. He ended up giving us a bit of a do, and he scored 4. I think we got beat 6-2 in the end, but yeah, a great sort of experience to play against these guys. You know, the tight park at Allen Park meant you're never far away from the action. And we ended up, I think we ended up going out that night with them. I think we ended up, all the Man United players got, I think they got a commemorative bottle of whiskey. I'm pretty sure Kanchelskis just looked at that and didn't know what it was. But we ended up going to Simpson's at that time. Ricky Simpson was I think he was either a sponsor at Cove or he was good pals with Alan McRae.
Five-a-side colleague Alan McRae's, I would think.
Aye, I think they were thick as thieves. So we ended up going to Simpson's for a meal after the game. And then we ended up, I think at that point you had Charlie's as well in the town, so you ended up a few drinks in there, and then we ended up in the nightclub, the Ministry. So we were on the Ministry with the Man United players, but a lot of the attention was obviously away from the Cove players and onto the Man United players in there. They were
nevertheless a great experience for you, Derek.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, fantastic, yeah.
So they decide then to put you out on loan to Cooter, another well-run junior club.
Yeah, so I mean, what am I, 18 or 19? I'm gaining the experience of watching these games and finding out where I should be, but I wanted to play as well, and so I think at the turn of the year of that first season, I think I had a brief spell. I think I went to Crombie actually, juniors for a few months under Lewis Muirhead, but I think vaguely recollect that. But then did another pre-season with Cove, and then I got farmed out to Cooter.
Of course, who would have been managed by a former Keith legend at the time? Would that be right, Bobby Gray?
No, that was before Bobby's time.
Okay.
So that was the managers there were Les Mason, and he played for Bucky and Devon Vale, and Charlie Ferris. So, so I obviously knew Charlie, and so yeah, I ended up the sort of 93, 94 season. Ended up playing back at Cuta, which was great. Yeah, he said, I mean, a fantastic club. Again, guys like Eric Duncan, Dougie Jameson, Albert Moyer. I think, unfortunately, I think he passed away. He was a long-time secretary. He passed away a few months ago, I think. Rowan Mackay, Dougie Grant, all these guys, like a bit like a lot of these clubs, all these guys behind the team, doing all their various jobs. But a great setup, and loved my time at Cuta. I think we were maybe in the top 4 or 5 in the Premier League, I think it was at that time. But Cuta had only been maybe a junior club for 7 or 8 years at that point. They'd come up through the amateurs, and were really just kind of maybe finding their way in the juniors. But we did fairly well. I think we finished 4th maybe that season, and we managed we went down to the Scottish Cup with a game against Newton Grange Star, so either side of Edinburgh, kind of in November time. They were actually beating finalists in early 1991. I think they got the final. So I think the story we were told anyway, the local press had been saying that we were basically coming down to do our Christmas shopping, and we ended up beating them 1-0. So a fantastic scalp for us. We had quite a bus journey on the way home.
How did you do?
Charlie likes a beverage now and again. But yeah, Colin Marner scored goals from other guys there. Neil Shand, he was a good player. Chris Ainsley came and signed the goal for us.
That would have been at the old Newton Grange ground. It was the one with the great big carved roof stand. Would that be right?
It could have been, Martin. It wasn't the best looking place, if I recall rightly. And
they're no longer there, but they had a really a massive carved corrugated iron stand. They must have commanded some pretty big crowds back in the 50s and the 60s, I would have thought.
But I was enjoying my time there. I actually wasn't playing up front. I was playing in the midfield. I was playing left mid, really. In behind Alan Walker, he played for Keith for a bit. One of the famous Walker brothers. So he was a good player to play behind. Although terrible at defending, but terrible at heading. The worst header of a ball I've seen, I think. Alan, sorry. With Kevin Lovey, I think he'd come in and played up front. He scored quite a lot of the goals. So yeah, it was, I went to Cuta thinking, just get some games and get some time, and absolutely loved it. And
you made the move permanent.
Yeah, so I went back I was still under retention at Cove, and I went back to do pre-season again. And from what I gather, I think 94, 95, I think Dave Watson had maybe left to go to Peterhead, I think. Kenny Taylor had taken over as manager. And I'd went back to them in the summer. I said, I'll do the pre-season and things, but I really want to maybe step away from COVID just now, because I'm not going to get the games that I need, and sign for Cuta. So Kenny said to hold off just a little bit. I think at that time that the junior season started a wee bit later, so he wanted to just see me do the pre-season, some of the pre-season games, and then we had I think COVID, some injuries a little bit during the close season. So actually the first game of that 94-95 season for Cove was up at Harmsworth Park. It was Wick's first game in the league. So it was Wick against Cove. So he asked us to travel up. So we stayed overnight actually in Strathpeffer. I stayed around with one of my pals, Kerr Gibson. but there was injury doubts over Ray Stephen and a couple others, and I wasn't really expected to play, but there was some, fitness test done before the game, and Ray couldn't play, so I managed to get on the bench, and I think I came on with about 10, 15 to go for. I think it was maybe Alan Leslie or somebody played up front with Michael Beattie, I think. But even then, my mind was kind of made up that I was going to leave Cove and go back to Cooter. My twin brother, he'd also signed for Cooter, I think. So it was a chance to go back and play with my brother. My uncle actually played for Cooter way back in the amateur days in the 70s, so there's a wee bit of a link there as well. But I think I signed, and then I think Charlie and Les got the bullet. We weren't. I think we got. I think Stoney would maybe pumped us. I think they were one of the top teams. I think they pumped us about 8-0 or something. And Les and Charlie left, and I think Tommy Madden came in, another guy who's well known in Highland League circles, and I think Ernie Drews, Tommy and Ernie took in. I'm not sure that Ernie stayed too long, because I think one of the players, Alan Vass, I think he took over as assistant manager. So I don't think Ernie stayed there for any length of time. But I think that 94, 95, that was my last season with Cooter. And I'd kind of, I wasn't really looking for moves or anything. I was just wanting to keep playing. I did, if I remember rightly, I played. There was the Aberdeenshire League had started up with the Highland League clubs, and I got offered to play in the Monday night sort of games type thing. So I actually played against my brother. I think he was actually, ironically, he was playing for Keith Aberdeenshire League team. I think I played for Devon Bale that night. I ended up injuring him. So he was unavailable for Cooter at the weekend. So the Cooter guys weren't too happy about that. But yeah, I loved my time at Cooter. Loved that couple of years. Again, it gave me regular football. I played most of it in midfield. I didn't really play up front at all. Managed the odd goal here and there, but great.
Fascinating stuff, Derek. We'll hear about you at the next stage of your career when we come back later on. But for now, over to you, Dave.
Jim, you were a season at Tannadice, and it was a strange move. You went from Dundee United to Invergordon. That's a strange one, Jim. How did that come about?
Well, actually went from United back to Ross County.
Okay.
But just a wee story about Jim McLean, and we can go back to John Gardner was on a few weeks ago. Again, John was saying he was a great tactician, but his man management was atrocious, absolutely atrocious. And but I didn't do myself any favours there. And I had to stay down the weekends, whereas the rest of the Central Belt guys, they would go home. And McLean had all these spies in every pub in town. So as a wee Highlander, I nip out for a drink at the weekend. But one weekend I went home, and I was out with my girlfriend at home and at her house, and never even had a drink the whole weekend. So I came back in the Monday, sitting in the dressing room, and usually the door would burst open, you'd come in, and it would be, "You, my room now," you know. So the boys were saying to me, "What was your weekend like, Jim?" It's quiet, at home, mum, dad, and girlfriend over at her family as well. Next thing, the door near come off its hinges. And this is Jim McLean, and the eyes were all puffed up and everything. You knew he was in a bad mood when that was happening. So he says, "You, my effing room now." So the guys are saying to me, "What have you been up to?" Now, I have no idea. So went through to his room, and he says, "What the F is this about you being a terrorist?" I went, "Sorry?" He says, "What the F is this about you? I've had that daft bat of a landlady of yours on the phone saying that she found a gun in your room." Bear in mind, this is the mid-70s when the IRA were on the go, and there was actually a bomb scare in Dundee and Boots across the road, probably a week before. So the landlady put 2 and 2 together and came up with 5. She found my shotgun, which was in the wardrobe. Now, I had a license for it, and it had a gun guard on it. So I said this to McLean, "I've got a license, I've got a gun guard on it." And he said, "Well, I hope so, because the police have got it. And the landlady doesn't want you back there again, because she thinks you're a terrorist." So I had to go down to the police station to pick up the shotgun. So I came in, took my license, showed the license, had the keys, opened the keys and all that. So the policeman in the middle of Dundee, the police station in the middle of Dundee, hands me the shotgun. And I just looked at him and I says, "I don't have a car, and I don't think I should be walking through the middle of Dundee with a shotgun." And he says, "Oh, don't worry, mate, you'll be all right." So, but anyway, that was Jim McLean thought I was a terrorist. So anyway, no, it was a great year for me training alongside the likes of players, Neri, Hegarty, Starrick, Kirkwood, Payne. Andy Gray was there for a while before he moved to Aston Villa. There was Jackie Copeland, McAlpine, Andy Rowland, guys like that, Frank Coppell, they were all there. It came to the end of the season, and McLean says to me, he says, "Look," he says, "if you can promise me that you'll knuckle down, I'll retain you." And I said, "Well, I can't." So he says, "Okay, I'm going to release you." So I went back to the Highlands, and Ross County got in touch with me. Maurice Newton says, "Can you come through? We'd like to sign you." So I went through. I was determined I was going to hold out for another £200. So Maurice sat me down and he says, "Right, Jim, we want to sign you. It's £500 and you can have one of the Friday specials," because he had a garage. So the Friday specials were 3 or 4 cars, which were rather cheap. So I went from going to hold out for 200, I'm getting 500 plus a car. So I said, I'll have the Vauxhall Viva. So anyway, they got all the papers through to sign. So I'm signing the papers for sign on for Ross County and also for getting the car. And he gives me the keys, and I said to him, "Well, can you get somebody to deliver it to Ballantour?" He says, "Why?" I said, "'Cause I'm banned from driving." I had another 6 months driving ban to go before I could drive it. So anyway, so again, my time at Ross County lasted up until October, I think, in November, when I got a job where I just couldn't train, and it was that was no use for them. So I didn't have to give the car back, but they released me. I played for Invergordon in the North Caledonian League. We had a great team there. We won the league that year. But then I managed to crash a car and got another ban. So don't go in the car with me. So anyway, but this one I damaged both my knees, so I was out. I couldn't do anything for it must be 9 months. And that time I moved to Aberdeen to get away from the Highlands, and got a job in Aberdeen as an apprentice structural engineering technician. And never played for months, and then I started looking for a game, and the boy who worked with me, his father worked alongside Ronnie Clark of Roslyn Sports. So we went over, spoke to him, and I signed for Roslyn and had a great sort of half a season with them. Again, scored a few goals, got a chance to move to Fraserburgh. Tom McMillan was the manager then, and he was taking a few guys through from Aberdeen, and I came through with them, and thoroughly enjoyed my time at Fraserburgh. It was great to get back playing again. I think the Roslyn, just getting back playing, and you're enjoying it, you're scoring goals, and then back into Fraserburgh, and same thing. I was a wee bit apprehensive that I wasn't good enough to play for Fraserburgh in the Highland League, but I got there, and the guys made me really welcome, and got on fantastic with Jim Crawford, John Duffy, Davy McKenzie, boys like that, and obviously we had the captain at the time, Kenny Rogers, who was just a really top guy, and very sadly missed now. But these guys were brilliant, and they helped me, got me back into football, and loved it. Just loved my time at Fraserburgh.
But then you signed for Montrose, you moved into the Scottish League.
Yeah, I had a good season with Fraserburgh, and Bobby Livingston come to see me. Willie Donald, who played for us, he worked alongside Bobby, and he said, Bobby, I think you should come and look at this guy, because Bobby was stopping playing himself, and they were looking for a centre forward. So Bobby came up with his father to watch a game with Peterhead, and again, I think the same scenario. I like going out at the edge of the 18-yard box, and as the corner was taken, start to run in, and Big John Seaverite, Mike McHattie, and myself ended up in the goals this time, with the ball. So Bobby's father was up at the game with him. Bobby's father, I think it was Lewis United, he was involved with it, and he just turned to Bobby and says, sign up, and that was it. So I believe they got about £3,000 for me, and they bought a tractor and a set of nets. And Kenny Rogers says, Jim, that tractor was more mobile than you. And somebody else says, the nets were more mobile than he was. But again, great. Down to Montrose, and Bobby was, what an absolute gentleman in football. He's probably, him and Ian McNeil, the two best gentlemen I've ever met in football. Just really superb guy. And my first game for Montrose was against Huntley as a pre-season friendly, and we won 4-0. I think I scored all four, so that was a good start for me. And then we had the first game of the season away to Cowdenbeath. I got the first goal in Scotland that season after a minute or so, and then I probably missed the first penalty that season as well. So would have put us up 3-0 at half time, but they went upfield, scored, made it 2-1, and then they beat us 4-2. So it was a bit disappointing that start. But again, really enjoyed myself there. We had some great players: John Sheeran, Stuart Beattie, Alec Wright, Mike Milne, who played before us as well, Alan Forrest, I think he played at Huntley for a while, Ray Charles, and then with Gary Murray and with Colin Walker, again one of the Walker twins, or not twins but brothers. And we used to travel down the minibus from Aberdeen, and it was a laugh a minute, and it was probably the most enjoyable time in that minibus. It was just crazy. And we had some, some really, I think the Meadowbank, when you ask what we're doing in 1980, the only game that was on in the whole of the UK on New Year's Day in 1980 was Montrose against Meadowbank. Meadowbank were top of the league, and they come up the night before. So a lot of us in Aberdeen, so we're, New Year's Eve, we'll go for one drink. So we're in the Zebra Lounge in Aberdeen, and there's about a foot of snow fell in Aberdeen that night. And we thought, the game will be off. So we just stayed in the lounge. So next morning, out of courtesy, I thought I better phone Bobby, because Bobby picked me up, Bobby Livingston. Bobby, is the game off, is it? No, no snow in Montrose. My heart sunk. Bobby picked me up, and I got in the car, and Happy Year, boss. He went, Happy, have you been drinking? Well, I thought the game might have been off, you know. So we were going down early for to get a wee sort of warm up, a stretch. We got down there, the park was rock hard, so we thought there's a chance it could be off here. And the ball was bouncing everywhere. Nobody could control it. When we turned up for, I think Alec Wright has been sick over the back of a car and everything. And Bobby went mental. He says, if any of you guys let me down out there today, you'll never play football again. So anyway, we went out. After 2 minutes, Kenny Taylor swung across and I got up, scored a header, and that was the first goal scored in the whole of UK in the 1980s. But we had to be helped back to the halfway line. So we ended up, Harry Johnson got a second, so we're winning 2-0 at half time, and we played them off the park. And Bobby at half time, he didn't know what to say. Said, brilliant. And then went out into the second half. Again, I got another one, 3-0 up. Then they got one back after half an hour, after 60 minutes, and I think everybody's backsides just collapsed. And then it went 3-2, and then with about 5 minutes to go, it went 3-3, and we held out for a 3-3 draw. And I hit the bar in the last minute, or could have been a famous win. And Bobby said to me afterwards, he said, why did you not score that one at the end? And I said, I thought they were worth a draw, boss. So he said, I just don't know what to do with you, he says. And I said, well, try buying me a drink, boss. So that was that. But loved my time there. Probably didn't take football too seriously. I just enjoyed the crack.
Mm-hmm. And then it was a season, or you went down to Wigan Athletic. Had the late great Ian McNeil something to do with that, Jim?
Yeah, Ian, as I said earlier, he was in charge of Ross County when I went there as a youngster for training, and he tried to sign me a few times before that for Wigan. And Wigan had played a pre-season friendly against Montrose that year, and had a good game against some big defenders that Wigan had. And Ian remembered that, so come the end of the season, he got in touch with Montrose and said, would like to speak to Jim. And Bobby, we were actually at a concert in the concert hall. It was Elkie Brooks, I think. And Bobby tapped me on the shoulder and says, Wigan would like to speak to you. Do you want to speak to them? And I says, yeah, I'll speak to them. But the problem was, when I'd left Dundee United, I had no real job to go to, and now I was a year to go of my apprenticeship as a structural engineering. And So I went down to Wigan and spoke to Ian and said, it's most important that I manage to finish my apprenticeship. So they arranged for me to finish my apprenticeship with the club, the company that were doing the new stand at Wigan. So I agreed. I was getting 4 times the wages that I was getting as an apprentice, plus I was going to get to finish my apprenticeship. So, but Ian was quite fly because you got George Eckert. Do you remember George that played for Ross County? George was playing at Wigan, so he got George to take me out. It was a Friday night. So he took me out a Friday night in Wigan, which, goodness me, for a boy from the Highlands, it was like Santa's Grotto. So it was fantastic. It was just the. I think Ian knew what he was doing. So anyway, and the big lad who played centre half against me the year before, boy Neil David, who unfortunately died at a young age. He was saying to all the girls in this pub, we really need this guy to come down to Scotland. So you girls have got to look after him tonight. And I was going, goodness sake. And he was terrible. But again, yeah, went down there. So I signed there, and again, it turned bad because the job never appeared. Because they went into dispute with the club over the cost of the stand. My job never appeared. I got injured. I was out of the picture. And then I asked if I could get away to go back. Ian McNeil was, he was devastated that he'd let me down over the job. So he said, yes, go back to the Highlands, see if you can get a club and if you can get a job. And that would have been best for both because I was out of the picture there. Mickey Quinn, who went on to play for Coventry, Man City and everything, he'd broken into the team. They had another lad, Peter Houghton, who was a fantastic centre forward for them. And Bobby Hutchinson had come down from Hibs as well. So I was well down the pecking order. But the guy there who ran the second team, he tried an experiment with me playing centre half. I quite enjoyed it. And sometimes I think maybe I should have given it a go. But if you're a centre forward, you like and you love scoring goals and you like making things happen, you don't want to be playing at the back, Mm-hmm. So that was so Wigan. We agreed to. Well, we had Larry Lloyd come in after Ian got sacked. Larry Lloyd came in, and you can't fault what Larry Lloyd did as a player with Nottingham Forest and Liverpool, but as a manager, his management and Jim McLean's were just about the same, So he came in and he was a bully. And the first day, and he got us all in the boardroom, and he says, right, you lot, he says, if I say something, it goes. If I say jump, you jump. And this boy, Frank Corrigan, who was a bit of a comedian, and I'm thinking, well, if we get a fresh chance, I can maybe get an opportunity to get back into the team. And Frank Corrigan says, oh, we'll just get Big Jim onto you. Tell Larry Lloyd. And he went, who the F is Big Jim? So everyone looks at me, and here's me, a condemned man, before we even had a training session. So he put a game on the pitch that day, and it was first team against the second team. He came as a player manager, so he put himself in as centre half. So I'm playing against him. So I sort of dropped the shoulder one way and went the other way, and actually sold him a cracker, and he absolutely halved me in two with a tackle. And he shouted, play on. Everyone stopped, he shouted, play on. So I went up to our goalkeeper and I says, Brownie, can you hang a ball up near between me and him? So he did that. I gave him enough room to come through, and he just walked straight onto my elbow. on his face. So that was my first day with the new manager, and he took me into his room, and he was threatening to absolutely hammer me. 6'4", a big lad, and I just sit and look out in that football pitch. You started it. I said, I just won't take shit from that like that from anyone. And anyway, I got on all right for about 2 weeks with him, and then he had a thing against all the Scottish lads. Billy Ackert was there by that time, and he was, he'd be racist now, the things he would say about Scots lads. So I had no time for him, and I couldn't wait to leave. So, but Wigan had some great times there. Now Billy didn't tell a story because, but I'll tell you a story about me and Billy, 2 girls. Now Billy is probably just fallen off a seat, but when I tell the story, it's Billy and myself stayed together in this flat. On a Sunday, we're looking for something to do, so we went roller skating. And myself and Billy, neither of us are the daintiest of creatures. And we got onto it, and honestly, it was like 2 Bambis on ice trying to stand up, and roller skates, probably worse than ice skates. And we were falling all over the place. And then these 2 young girls who were the granddaughters of the woman who owned the place we were staying in, they came to our rescue. We were lying out in the middle of this roller skating place. And these 2 girls, were probably about 7 and 8, grabbed us by the hands and took us back to the side. And that was crazy. Me and Billy trying to be roller skating champions or whatever. So, but good times, some great friends. I still keep in touch with the guys down there and go down now and again. So,
thanks for that, Jim. It's getting so dark down south of the border that John's had to put the light on. Back to you, Martin. John's all yours.
You'll never have like that, John. You'll have to fork out 50 pence for the meter now.
Oh.
3 years at Yeovil, John, and then you are reacquainted with a good friend of ours at Elgin City.
Yeah, how it came about was my contract was up. And Yeovil had basically said to me, if you go back to Scotland, you can go on a free. If you stay in England, we want money for you. I'd spoke to Pelly, and Pelly had got the job as player manager at Elgin City, and drove up to meet him, sorted everything out quite quickly, and then that was it really. Moved everybody up, family, the lot up to Elgin, and it was good. I mean, really enjoyed it. It was obviously known Pelly before I go up. That's an advantage. Stevie was great with us, and it was good. We had a good season, and I think I'd scored 32 goals by February. So there was a few sort of reports in the papers that people were watching and different bits and pieces, and my old manager, Jerry Gow at Yeovil, by this time had got the Weymouth job. And Jerry had come in and he had bid £25,000 from Weymouth. So what happened was Jerry was flying up to sign me. I actually went through to the airport to pick Jerry up, driving back to Borough Briggs to meet the committee in the boardroom. As I was walking in to the boardroom, the secretary popped his head out the door just as you go into Borough Briggs. It's the secretary's office right next to the boardroom, and he says, "John, can I have a word?" And he had a face on him like there was something happened. I thought somebody had died or there was something that happened. And he says, "Can you come in?" So I went into the secretary's office, and everybody else carried on into the boardroom. And by this time, Jerry had sat down in the boardroom. He had laid out, he had bought a banker's draft with him for £25,000. All the forms were all ready to sign. Gone into the secretary's office, and he said, "McNeil's been on the phone." And straight away, being a Celtic supporter, I thought Billy McNeil. He says, "McNeil," and going back to what Jim said there, it was Ian McNeil at Shrewsbury. You know, so Ian McNeil was on the phone. He said, you have to phone him. I went, I'm going to sign for Jerry. Jerry's got the stuff on the table, ready to sign. I'm going to sign for Weymouth. And he went, just phone him and see what he's got to say. So I phones Ian McNeil and I says, Mr. McNeil. I says, John McGinley. He says, oh, John, right. I want you to come down straight away. I want you to sign. And I went, well, Jerry Gow's here from, he says, I know that. His Ian Jr., based in Aberdeen, was covering the Highland League for Ian. And Ian had been keeping tabs on me. Anyway, Ian had phoned his dad and said, he's going to sign for Weymouth. And, you know, Ian hadn't seen me in the flesh himself, but he had obviously took the word of Ian Jr. So he said to me, he says, I want you to come down tomorrow morning and sign. And I went, well, I'm not coming down on trial or nothing. And he went, no, I want you to sign you. I went, all right. I went, fine, right, I'll travel down tomorrow. I went back into the boardroom and Jerry Gow by this time sitting there, and I said, everybody else that was in there, I says, could you give me and Jerry a few minutes? So sat down with Jerry, explained to him what had happened. I mean, for about 5 or 10 minutes, he tried to talk me out of it. But he conceded defeat and says, as long as I get the first call, if things don't work out for you, I says, fine, and that was it. And so then myself and Jerry went out for a night out, and I drove him back to the airport the next morning and carried on. I had an old Ford Capri at this moment when I was at Elgin. I had to drive down to my mum's in Fort William to get her car because my car would have never made it to Shrewsbury. So borrowed my mum's car to drive down there. And Ian, I think, you know, Jim had said, you know, one of the most influential people in my career anyway, that's for sure, was Ian McNeil. What a gentleman and a proper football man. But as Jim says, fly at the same time, you know. And I got down, arrived at Shrewsbury, and so Ian took me into the office and had a chat with me and said to me, right, he says, I'm just waiting on the secretary coming with all the paperwork and that. He says, there's some gear in the changing room for you. He says, why don't you go in and go out and have a wee kick about it? All right. Little did I know, went in, got changed, put some gear on, walked out onto Gay Meadow at the time, the old ground at Shrewsbury, and he had 2 apprentices each side with 2 bags of balls on the right, 2 bags of balls on the left, and a goalkeeper there. And it was a case of, right, he wanted to see me in the flesh, he wanted to see me finishing. So I was there for about 45 minutes, right, left side, headers, volleys, right foot, left foot, finishing. And he was like, hey, come on in. And that was him. So he took me in and signed me. And that was Ian. But he had to have that look in the flesh himself, you know, just to make his mind up. But Ian was wonderful. I mean, he really was. He was wonderful to me. And in fact, you know, I had three clubs with him in the end, you know, but tremendous man.
And after a season, you go out and loan to Bury?
Well, I didn't actually go on loan. They signed me. They signed me at the end. By this time, Ian had left. Ian had left and went to Millwall as Bruce Raick's assistant manager. And Asa Hartford had taken over in the job. And Asa was a wonderful football man as well. And I got on really well with Asa. And I'd come to... They had offered me a new contract. I was at the end of my contract. The club had a year's option on me, but Bury had come in to sign me. And they had a bid accepted, £175,000. I went through to Bury. I didn't really have an intention of signing for them because by this time Ian had been in touch and wanted me to go to Millwall. I went through, and the manager at the time was Sam Ellis. Don't ask me why to this day, but I'd signed. I'd walked away and I'd basically signed for them, and that was it. And you know, Bury had quite a bit of investment at that moment, and they were going for promotion. Signing for the club, that was the case. 6 months down the line, you couldn't get a pair of laces at the club, and you know, they sent me out on loan to Millwall. I went down to Millwall for a month's loan. Obviously, got back in touch with Ian and Bruce Raick down there. They signed me permanently a month later at the end of my loan. It was a case of Bury had to sell 6 players or they were going to go bust. So 6 of us went to various clubs. And that was it, you know, back in tow with Ian and Bruce on a permanent basis at Millwall.
Yep. Bury as a club, have obviously had haven't had their troubles to seek in recent times. A very famous secretary at Bury, would that be correct? Famous footballing dynasty.
Neville, plus his wife Jill. Jill Neville was there as well. Lovely family, obviously with the Neville brothers at Man United as well. But yeah, very famous locally. Neville was a great cricketer, and he was a great football man. His wife Jill was into netball and just very sport minded, and that was it. But yeah, they were at the club when I was there.
And obviously heartbreaking the situation they found themselves in at the turn of this year.
Well, I mean, I think it was a Northwest thing, really. When you see the clubs that were in trouble, my own club here at Bolton was in serious trouble, and obviously Bury going out of business, last season. Regardless of anything else, because there's a local rivalry here with Bolton and Bury and Wigan as well. Wigan are in financial problems at this moment in time, and you don't want to see it happen. Doesn't matter how much of a rivalry there is. Football's football. You don't want to see any football club going out of business or having bad times, and nobody wants rogue owners, and we've had our fair share of them, that's for sure.
Yeah. Are there moves afoot in England to sort of tighten things up? Obviously, it's very, very strict here in Scotland with regards to the SPFL, keep tabs on clubs' PAYE payments to HMRC, etc. Obviously, I can't go into specifics as to what happened at Bury, but it would very much appear that they were hard done by at the end of the day.
They were hard done by the end of the day. There was other solutions there available, and the sort of the decision to come to, knock them out of the league. I mean, they're starting next season in the Northwest Counties League, which is, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 steps down, probably from where they were, the EFL have to get a grips of things. As you said, it's run a tight ship's run in Scotland. It hasn't been the case down here. Now, there is a lot more foreign ownership in England, but it seems to be that obviously their checks and their background checks maybe can't be done as well with foreign people. And I know there's a lot of money that seems to be there and available at one point, and it's not there the next day. So it's very, very easy to overcome. But again, it's a Northwest problem at the minute, because it seems to be all the clubs that are in trouble or within probably a 25-mile radius of here.
Yeah. So back to your move to Millwall. Now, we had a guest on here the other week, Kevin Bremner, another Keith legend, Derek. And he was very much of the opinion, and we tried to pin him down to say what his favourite club, but he said the fans at Millwall were absolutely magnificent. And out of all the clubs he was at, he would put down his time at Millwall as being the most memorable. Do you reflect that opinion, with the exception of Bolton Wanderers, obviously?
No, listen, they're very passionate supporters, there's no doubt about that. And they were as much against you as they were for you when things weren't going well. I think I was there at a time that was difficult under the circumstances, because Bruce Rake was the manager. I think he was hard done by there, and the treatment he received wasn't great at that time. It made it hard for us, I think, because we were Scottish as well, and obviously Bruce was Scottish. I think it was just difficult, and they're hard to please. As I said, they're very, very passionate. They haven't got a great name of supporters, as in, they seem to get in trouble quite a lot and everything else. But no, you can't deny the passion's fantastic. There's no doubt about that. And I think, it's a bit different now. The old Coldblow Lane is different to the new stadium. The new stadium's fantastic, and I think I think every team, that has moved to a brand new stadium has lost that bit of probably atmosphere within the stadium for a long time, before you seem to get it back. I know the experience that we've had here at Bolton, moving from the old stadium to the new stadium, it's very patchy at times, and the atmosphere, and it took a long, long time for people to call it home, really.
John, we'll come back to the Wanderer years in a wee while. for the time being. Thank you very much for that. Dave, back to you.
Yeah, can I just touch on something John said, that he mentioned Ian McNeill Jr. Now, Ian doesn't miss an episode of this show. He's an avid viewer, and we'll give him a shout out tonight, Ian McNeill Jr. And I remember being down once on holiday in Shrewsbury, John, and I had a lovely lunchtime chat with Ian McNeill at his house in Shrewsbury, and with coffee and cakes with his lovely wife. And then I went down to Gay Meadow and introduced myself, and they said, if you're staying here tomorrow, come along to our game tomorrow. I thought, what a really, really lovely gesture. And I found the people at Shrewsbury Town extremely friendly, John. I take it you found that also.
Love the town, love the people. You know, we had a very, very strong Scottish contingent down there as well at that time. You know, just before I joined, Doug Rookby had just left 2 weeks prior to me joining, but we had Davy Moyes there. We had Victor Cassou. We had Dougie Bell. Obviously, you know, Dougie was a fantastic player for Aberdeen. Stevie Pittman came down later on, a left full back. He came down to join us. Alan Irvin, who was at Falkirk, he went to Liverpool. He came and joined us as well. We had Jim Melrose there. So we had plenty of Scottish in the dressing room, that's for sure. But no, the people in Shrewsbury were so friendly, really looked after us.
Yeah, and a lovely ground right next to the river. Beautiful ground indeed. Martin put his hand up. He wants back in.
Yeah, I just wanted to say Victor Cassou, I think, played one game for Elgin City in the Highland League. I had the privilege of refereeing that game at Huntly. I think they were going for the title. Both clubs were going for the title at the time. I think that might have been under John Teasdale's stewardship at the time, if I recall correctly. But it was a bit of an eye-opener when we saw the team lines. When the team lines are handed into the referee's changing room there, I thought there can't be more than one. And it was
what a character he was,
yeah,
I tell you.
Yeah, he was a handful on the park as well, I can assure you.
And you mentioned also, John, Ian McNeill himself. I was at Ian's funeral a couple of years ago now, and it was an amazing eulogy that Bruce Rea came up from England and did for Ian. I thought it was a remarkable thing, and they were great pals, weren't they?
I was there, Dave. I was there myself. I was sitting with Bruce on the day I was at Ian's funeral, and yeah, I mean, honestly, Bruce, the two of them were a fantastic pair. They really were. I mean, they lived they breathed football. They really did. Covered the country together, you know, drove to matches up and down the country. They wouldn't think of anything of finishing training at Bolton, say on a Tuesday, and drive up to Scotland on a Tuesday night to watch a game, get back down late and be in first thing for training the next morning. And they didn't think anything of it. And in fact, the two of them, you know, spent so much quality time together in the car, and all it was football. All they ever spoke about. But they knew every player, whether it be in Scotland, Ireland, you know, down in England. They knew every player, whatever they did, they were on top of everything, and they made some great signings. They really did.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that, John. Derek, you're about to start, well, it turned out to be more than a decade with Keith at Kynoch Park. How did that come about?
I'd finished the season with Cooter, but I'd actually, well, almost never happened actually. I was asked to play a game for Devon Vale, who I had said before I'd played, like, I think I maybe played a couple of Aberdeenshire sort of league games for, but they'd asked me to come and play a trial game up at Lossy. It was the aforementioned Kevin Bremner was the manager, and I think we won. I think we won 4-2 or something. I think I played wide right or something like that. I can't remember. And went home, and I thought, well, you know, I'll get a phone call either way, you know, if they want me to sign or not. But it so happened that Kevin moved to Colchester, I think, within that summer. So that was kind of dead and buried, really. But I also knew that Keith had been watching. I think Ian Cuptie Mackay had watched a few of the junior games. He was good pals, even though Charlie wasn't my manager anymore. They were good pals and come and seen a few of the games. So they approached me just to come along to pre-season training and see how I felt. I was very happy at Cooter. I wasn't really angling for a move, but I think once I'd got to the training and I'd been in amongst the Keith boys, a really good bunch of boys, I felt very comfortable. I probably wanted to get back into the Highland League sort of side of things, and it seemed a good fit. The Keith, I think they'd maybe been fourth the year before, and obviously looking at the guys in the team, had quite a good team. So it was Jim Hamilton and Ian Mackay that were the management team at that point, and they offered me a deal, 2-year deal, and I said, yeah, that sounds good. Let's give it a bash.
Yeah, what a pair of managers, manager and co-manager that they were. Did they play the good cop bad cop game?
Chalk and cheese, hammy, so laid back. He would. I'd never seen this in the changing room, but he would just, when he was naming the team, he would go 1, 2, so he'd just go around the room and point at people. So if you sat in your usual place, he would kind of find you, but I think he was a bit blind as well. So if you moved about, he didn't know where you were. So when you're looking for number 8 and he's looking Nicol, where is he? So he'd look about the room, and it was just, but obviously a great lad, very laid back. Loved to join in at the training and things. Cup guy, he's obviously a Keith legend as well. He part of that sort of 3 in a row sort of team that John Curran was speaking about. I think he was in amongst them, and he was a bit more, shall we say, vocal, a bit more volatile, shall we say, a bit more animated on the sidelines. But again, was a great lad. I used to get picked up at his house. He stayed in Kintour, so I would get down there, and the bus would come and pick us up from there. So yeah, a couple of different kind of characters there, but they obviously gave me a chance to sort of get back into the Highland League, and I think again I played midfield pretty much that first season. Played kind of left midfield. I think I scored about 8 goals, but I think I played a majority of the games. I think I played 30 odd games, so they seemed to maybe like what they saw.
Mm-hmm. One of the highlights through your long career at Kynoch Park must have been being part of that Keith team that were the champions of the Highland League in the Millennium, and it was a special thing, being the Millennium champions.
Yeah, I think if we go, I suppose that was a few years down the line. Within that first year, we had the Rangers game as well. We had that was my first season. So first season at Cove, I'd played Man United. So I'll come back to the Millennium champions in a minute. My first season at Keith, we drew Rangers in the Scottish Cup, if you recall, and I'm sure Thana was speaking about it. We played Devon Vale the round before. That's when you, as I say, you qualified through the qualifying cup if you got into the semi-finals. I think Devon, we got a bye in the first round. I think we got Devon Vale in the second round. We played them at Banff 0-0, and then the draw was that night. And a lot of us were in town. I think a few of us were standing in the Bells pub at that time. I think when the draw came out, first name out the hat was Keith Vale versus Rangers. So it kind of went a bit crazy But with the replay to go first, back at Kynach, won that 2-0. I managed to score actually, and Colin Maver got the other goal. So that was us into a media storm, as it were. We you know, all the press was well, it was nothing we'd seen before, but particularly the week leading up to the game. Now at that point, I probably Kevin Will was. I mean, I was touch and go whether I would play. Actually, I mean, I would have probably might have been on the bench or might have made the starting 11. But Kevin Will would have been the guy that would have been playing. But he was struggling with an injury. He was, I think, he had a calf injury or something, and you know, he was touch and go. I think they were trying to do everything to try and get him to the game, but unfortunately for him, he didn't make it. So it meant that I was in the team. But you know, it was just it was a crazy kind of couple of weeks, really. You know, obviously they moved the game to Pittodrie. You know, you're looking at, I think there was more folks said they'd been there than what there was, but I think there was about 14,000, maybe 14.5, I think it was. So a tremendous atmosphere. We had a pre-match at the Athol Hotel, and you know, it was, you know, you pulled into Pittodrie, all these folk waiting for it. We thought they were waiting for us, but they clearly weren't waiting for us. They were waiting for the Rangers team. But I think the week before, Rangers they beat Hibs 7-0, or maybe it was a couple of weeks before it. So you know, we were, you know, you're getting ready for the game. You're standing in the tunnel, and you know, all these guys are. It's the first team essentially. All these guys are 6'2", built a bit bigger than me. The slight guy, you know, they're. You know, I actually played on the right, so we had the easy. I think Gary Thow was behind me, so we had a pretty easy job containing Davy Robertson and Brian Loudrup. So that was. I'll never forget Hammy's team talk. Actually, he was just before the game, and you know, I suppose the usual stuff. He's like, you know, okay, lads, you know, just try and get a foothold in the game. You know, keep it tight for the first 20, blah blah blah. You know, so it gets to 20 minutes into the game, we're 4-0 down. So yeah, the team talk didn't quite go to plan, but I remember coming in at half time, and at that point, Davy Robertson was one of the few players that hadn't scored. So, so I was being fairly brash about it. I was. Says, oh well, Davy hasn't scored, so straight out second half. Who scores the first goal? The second half, Davy Robertson. So, but no, a great atmosphere, a great day for the club, and I think unfortunately, I think we did get to the qualifying cup final that first season, well, but I think we got beat, if I'm right. I think I was sub that day. I think they got beat by. I did have it written down, I think. Can't remember. Aye, Fraserburgh beat us 4-3 after extra time. I came on, I should have scored actually against Billy Gordon, but anyway. So, you know, there was a couple of years. Hammy and Cuptie left. My second season, pretty much near the start, I think maybe October, November time. And Martin Allen being a player, of course, he was the skipper when we played Rangers. He took over the job, him and Alan Lyons. And then that was really when I got moved. Well, they moved me up front. They moved me back into striker, which I hadn't really played much since my juvenile days. And then that's when I started scoring a few. And yeah, we probably, I think we were second, maybe the year after, maybe it was that year we were second behind Huntley by about 7 or 8 points. We were kind of there or thereabouts, but we signed, we got beaten another qualifying cup, I think, and we signed Darren Still in '98, and that was well, that was to prove pretty pivotal for the club, really. He'd been at Lossy, who were quite a good side. I think they'd won maybe. I think they won back-to-back North of Scotland Cups and things, so they're a pretty decent side. But the club backed Marty and forked out a fee for Darren, and he was integral in that sort of moving up into championship kind of contenders. Really, he was a real driving force of the team, and with a great spine, kind of down the run, middle of the side, with obviously Thainer in goals. We had Keithy Watt, Neil Gibson, we had Darren in the middle, with Scott Taylor, Paul Presley came in, with myself, some change of partners up there with me, with Keith Robertson, Neil McRitchie, and then we had guys like Gary Taylor who'd come in and just get the ball back for us, and Jiggers, John Wilson. So we were probably looking at the team. We were probably underachieving a wee bit, I would say. It wasn't until we got maybe Darren on board, it really kind of drove us on, and led us to the sort of the championship in the Millennium, Dave. Yeah, I think the one thing we've probably not heard enough about Rothes so far, guys. I know you like your Rothes stats, but two things. I was speaking about my twin brother earlier on. His father-in-law is a hero of yours, I think, Dave. Is that right?
Well, who's that now?
My twin brother Colin. His father-in-law is, I believe, a hero of yours. He was Charlie Gray, who was the goalkeeper for Rothes. I think they won did they win the North of Scotland Cup or something?
They did indeed.
They did, and no disrespect, Derek, but Charlie had a better beard than you've got.
His is pretty grey now, though. I think a bit like myself, a wee bit, but I haven't seen him for a wee bit. But yeah, I think.
So I think I'm familiar with how Charlie, his father-in-law, your brother's father-in-law.
My twin brother's father-in-law.
I know the story of how your twin brother's father-in-law met your twin brother's
mother-in-law. Evie.
Yes.
Evie. Charlie and Evie.
Can I tell the story?
Please do.
Charlie and Gavin Gray, who was captain of Rothes, I believe went out on a date with two girls. And subsequently, neither of the girls particularly found the dates to their liking. And I'm reluctant to use the word swap, but I think they both ended up marrying the other girl on that date. Would that be right?
It could be. I mean, next time I see him, Next time I see him, I'll ask him.
I know Gavin's, just as a twist, Gavin's daughter dates our physio, so that's how I know the story. She's quite a regular. Gavin's daughter's quite a regular at Balmoor Stadium on a Saturday. Yeah. So I believe it's quite an unusual situation. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not asking the viewers to send in answers to that.
I think Charlie maybe did not play for Fraserburgh as well. Or?
He did indeed. Yep.
Yeah, he's got. He was always used to ask about the games and things. So the wee Rothes link for you. The other thing, it's actually about that 99-2000 season. I was going through some stuff, and I'd asked Charlie Simpson as well. I mean, my memory of it was that one of your earlier guests, Barry Wilson, there was chat that he had scored the last senior goal of the millennium. I can't remember who he was playing for or who against, but that was kind of the given, I think. But I dug out a letter here from Easton Thane. You'll know Easton.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
we all know Easton.
I think it's maybe the P&J, but I'll just read it out for you. He's sent in a letter, I think. Last goal of millennium. Sir, some of the media have stated that Barry Wilson scored the last senior goal of the last millennium, as well as the first of the new millennium. Well, that is incorrect. But the fact that some of the media got this wrong does not surprise me, as they look no further than the SPL and the Scottish League. While Barry Wilson scored the last senior league goal of the last millennium, he did not score the last senior competitive goal of the millennium. This honour fell to Derek Nicol of Keith. He scored the only goal of the Highland League match between Rothes and Keith at Rothes on December 31st, 1999. Last time I checked, it was senior teams that competed in the Highland League. Not only did he score the last senior competitive goal in Scotland, it was also the last senior competitive goal in Britain and Europe, and I feel that this achievement should be recognised. So there you go, another little thing about Rothes. I know you like your wee facts about Rothes, but anyway.
Derek,
So maybe that needs to be changed, eh?
That game you talk about, if I remember correctly, was that the only game on in the Highland League card that day, if I remember rightly?
Yeah, it was an absolute mud bath. It was, it finished 1-0. I can't remember what time he scored, but
I seem to remember that the Rothes chairman at the time, Jimmy, was a farmer, and he'd covered the whole pitch in straw to stop the ice and snow getting the pitch. And to celebrate it being the only game on in, I think maybe in Scotland that day, everybody, as they left the pitch to celebrate the millennium, were given a miniature of whiskey as they went out of the ground.
That's right. All the people that turned up at the game got a dram, and that was just part of the thing that happened, I think.
Including me, I have to say.
Exactly, as well, yeah. So anyway, I digress a wee bit, but that was obviously during the our 99-2000 season, so it was a valuable 3 points at the end of it. But I think if slightly later on that season, I think actually Peterhead had come in for us. Peterhead were obviously moving into the Scottish League at the end of that season. I think Ian Wilson came back and approached Keith for asking to sign myself and Darren Still just around the turn of the year. So I think we had a decision to make about whether we left or stayed with Keith. In the end, I think obviously we stayed, but that gave Keith quite a boost for the run in towards that title. And I think, if I recall rightly as well, I think I scored in the last 7 games, 7 league games. I think I scored in the last 7. I think Thainer touched upon the game against Fraserburgh. We played Lossy, I think, on the Saturday up at Lossy, beat them 2-0, and then we played the Fraserburgh game on the Wednesday night, who were our nearest challengers. That was I think there was about 1,600, 1,700 in kind of park that night. We managed to squeeze out a 3-2 win. We almost mucked it up. We were 3-0 up at half time, and then obviously Charlie rallied the troops, and I think there was a streaker as well, Dave. I mean, maybe you saw that at half time. I don't know, but I think it was a typical Highland League game. I think there was 9 bookends. There was 1 sending off. There was a streaker. There was, there was a last minute misses. There was, it had everything, I think. And I think even though we subsequently lost to Brora on the final day, I think that knocked the stuffing out the Broch, really. They obviously drew with Lossy, I think, and that handed us the title, and first title. Yeah.
It was a strange atmosphere, that game against Brora, because I was at that game, Derek, and you got beat by Brora. I remember rightly, Donald Allen, the Brora centre-half, scored with a header from about the penalty spot. And at the end of the game, it all went quiet because the result hadn't come through from Fraserburgh, and all of a sudden everybody started in the middle of the pitch. You obviously had a mobile phone, or somebody that maybe no mobile phone, but word came through that Fraserburgh could only draw, if I remember rightly, and you were the champions.
I'm sure Sandy Stables must have had a direct line to Bellesley or something.
I would have thought so.
But yeah, our game had finished. You know, we thought we thought we'd blown it. We got beat 4-3 from Brora. Yeah, Donald Allen, he was one of the scorers. Yeah, and you know, we were a bit of despair at the end of the game. You know, anxiously waiting the result from Bellesley, and it must have been a good few minutes. I think it probably wasn't as long as that, but it seemed like that. And you know, the news came through that, you know, it was Fraserburgh 0, Lossy 0. I think rarely you get a 0-0 at Bellesley, and that meant that we couldn't be caught. I think Brock had another couple of games to go, but eventually it finished up. I think we won it by 5 points, but it certainly didn't feel as close as far as that between the two of us. It was touch and go day on day, but great celebrations, great weekend, great. You know, I think Thainer touched upon it when he was on. You know, to win the league was, I think I don't think Keith had done it since the mid-80s maybe, and then you know, I think you were always getting the stories of the 3 in a row and the whatnot, but we, you know, absolutely delighted to do that.
We'll touch on the second half of your career at Kennedy Park very shortly, but for a moment, thanks for sharing those memories, Derek.
Thank you, Dave.
Jim, you leave Wigan, you head back across the border, rejoin Montrose, but you didn't get off to the best of pre-season starts.
Well, first of all, before I came back, I signed on talks with Peterhead, Elgin City and Cali. But the most important thing for me was finishing my apprenticeship. And Bobby Livingston managed to get me an interview with the Seaforth Engineering at Inverurie. In fact, Captai Mackay, he worked there, so I got the job there. So that was huge for me, and it was good that I managed to stay in the Scottish division as well. So I went back to Montrose, and I was absolutely flying now after having a year's full-time training behind me. And then in the last pre-season game at Huntley, I broke my leg, and you had John Sheridan on a couple of weeks ago, and John broke his leg in the same game. And Derek was talking about the spine of the team. Well, that was in the one game. Bobby Livingston lost his centre half and his centre forward. So John was considerably worse than mine. Break was considerably worse than mine. But I never played again until I think it was into January, and John never played at all that season, I don't think. So the team had an indifferent season, and Bobby ended up getting, he left the club, I think near enough the end of January. And we got a new manager, Steve Murray. He came in, Steve Murray, ex-Aberdeen Celtic, I think. And he was a fitness fanatic, which first thing he said to me was, you need to lose half a stone. So he says, I won't play you until you're, I think it's 13 stone 4. Over being that weight now. So he came in, and I never really got going that season. So it was the start of a new season. So we're down the sands at Montrose, and myself and Kenny Taylor, who's no lightweight either, we were at the front to take the pace, and Steve Murray ran past us, and then everyone else kept running past it. Myself and Kenny were at the back on the soft sand, and then Kenny sort of got away from me, so I was last. And Ali Donaldson was there. He was Steve Murray's Ali Donaldson, the goalkeeper. So I stopped, absolutely exhausted, and he says, right, that's you fined £1 for stopping running. So started running again. You get £20 wages, you know? So started running again. Did about another maybe 100 yards on the soft sand, stopped again. He says, right, that's you fined another £1. Now get going, get going. I said, well, you're going to fine me £1 every time I stop. I'm stopping for 20 minutes. And he says, that's your fine, £20. I said, well, there's no sense in me running now. So I wasn't very good at training on soft sand, put it that way. But in and out of the team, and another Highland League legend that joined us, what's his name, Eddie Copeland, he was there for a while. So Eddie was, he was playing up front, and obviously he's playing very well. And I got a couple of games substitute, and he threw me on in midfield. And then we were at Arbroath one day, and I'm not sure if you're aware, across the road from the Arbroath pitch is the Tucky's Nuke, a bar. So I wasn't expecting to be playing this day. And one of the other lads, Alec Wright, his son Scott Wright, plays for Aberdeen. He was in dispute with the club, but he had to come along. So he says to me, I'm on my way over to the Tucky's Nuke. And I says, well, as soon as the team's named, that'll be over, right? So Alec goes away over. So Steve Murray says, okay, hands up those who didn't think they'd be playing today. Everyone's looking around. Hands up those who went out last night because they didn't think they'd be playing today. Let me put it another way. Jim, did you go out last night? I says, no, boss, I wasn't out. Well, we'll soon find out you're playing midfield today. Are you up for it? Of course, I'm up for it. Play anyway. So then I remembered that Alec was across the road with a pint waiting for me. And it's very soft, the pitch, so we weren't allowed to warm up on it. And Craig Cooper, who played for us, he had to go for a fitness test on the grass over beside the Tucky's Nuke. So I said, I'll go over and help. So by this time I'm in my full strip, ready for the game. I've got a tracksuit top on. So I'm over to the window of the Tucky's Nuke. I could see Alec at the bar with the pints. So I'm sort of knocking on the window. And I can't get any of his attention. So I walked into the bar. The bar's full of Montrose supporters. And I'm in there with my boots, my shorts, my tracksuit top on. Alec, I'll not be able to have my pint because I'm playing. He handed me the pint. And I went to, as if I was going to take a sip, and the Montrose supporters were dancing up and down because I got on really well with them. But I didn't have a drink. But anyway, went in onto the game, and 2 minutes into the game, I thought, I'm going to, really get the tackles in here. So I tackled the boy on the edge of their box, and it flew into the net. So we're winning 1-0 after a tackle from me. So I lasted about 60 minutes, but I was absolutely shattered. So, but that was Stevie Murray. He was a fitness fanatic and didn't fit with me so much. But then we drew Brora Rangers in the Scottish Cup away to Brora, and I was injured and I didn't get back fit enough to be on the bench even for that game. We drew 0 each up in Brora. So then came back to Montrose, and I was fit to play in the replay the following Saturday. So I started in that game. I thought I did well against the big Robert Christie, Robert Allen, and Duggan Norris, 3 big centre backs at Brora. And your namesake, Derek Nicol, played for us. He scored the goal that day. And then they brought equalised. So back then they went to a neutral ground for the second replay. And it was on the Monday night at King's Mills in Inverness. So the bus picked us up in Aberdeen, but Steve Murray came from, he was coming up the A9 in his car. So there was an awful lot of snow that night. So we were sitting, waiting with less than an hour to go to kick-off. And Les Barr, one of the senior players, says, right, we'll just go with the team from Saturday. So we all started getting ready. So then one of the Montrose committee came in with a message saying, well, the manager stopped at Pitlochry or whatever, and he's phoned this team in. So the team, I was taken out the starting, and I was put on the bench. So disappointed, because I thought I'd done well on the Saturday. And I was in the Highlands in my home. I thought, you know, it'd be great to show the guys up here what I can do. Then we got another message, and I was off the bench. And they replaced me with it was a lad, Davy Neal, who's a centre half. And everyone, nobody could believe what had happened. And they said, look, we'll pretend we never got this message. And the boy Davy Neal says, and by this time I was absolutely raging. And I says, nah, sorry boys, I'm out of here. I got changed now. We're at the Heathmount, you know where the Heathmount is, just across the road. So had a few drinks in there. Came back. They got beat 5-2 after X time. And I went seen Steve Murray, and I says, look, I'm finished here. This is, and he says, well, you need to ask someone else, because I've just handed in my resignation. So,
Jim, was that game played in very cold conditions? Was it?
Very cold.
Am I right in saying, did Montrose have a player to be treated for hypothermia after the game?
No,
right?
It was the referee. The referee had hypothermia.
Yeah.
I think some of the players were suffering a bit as well. It's the sort of weather a Highlander like myself and John, we would win out beer top end. You know? It wasn't that bad. But yeah, that was Dennis Darcy became the manager, or temporary manager, and Dennis tried to talk me out of leaving. And I says, no, I just felt so let down. And the Montrose released me, and then I've got to mention this, that I signed a temporary contract for Devonvale on the proviso that should I get a chance to go somewhere else, I could leave. And that's what I did. And then the opportunity came to go to Hong Kong. And I'd finished my apprenticeship by then, and I'd actually just been paid off because there was no work. So I was sitting around, read in the paper, Bill McAllister had a story about Billy Eckert, who'd been offered Hong Kong. But Billy had decided on, putting his roots down in the Highlands, and he had a business that he was starting with another lad. So Billy turned it down. So I got in touch with Bill McAllister. I says, Bill, if you're looking for a big, ugly centre forward, then maybe I fit the bill. And so that was, Bill got in touch with the contact, and within 2-3 days, I was on my way. So it was crazy. I got a phone call saying, all right, Jim, they need you in London tonight, about 10 o'clock. And this was about 8 in the morning in Aberdeen. So I had to go and book flights and whatever. And so the only instructions I got were to meet a Mr. Tam outside the Loon Moon restaurant in Victoria Street in London. So I got down to Heathrow, I went and asked her, where about, how do I get to Victoria Street in London? So which one? That was a good start. I said, oh, is there a Chinese area? He said, well, that'll be the one in Piccadilly or wherever. So anyway, I got in there, walked up, boy turned up. I was there 2 minutes before him, he turned up, handed me a one-way ticket to Hong Kong, took me around the corner, shoved me into this B&B place, and I couldn't sleep because I was worried how to get out to Heathrow. So what I did is I just got out of the place about 1 o'clock in the morning and just made my way out to Heathrow. Got the flight out there, straight off the flight, walked through the doors into the arrivals lounge, and there's just a sea of Chinese faces. And I thought, oh my God. It was okay when I was in London, because I know people in London, but I don't know anyone in Hong Kong. So next thing, this guy comes over and shakes my hand and he says, Mr. Oliver. So I says, yes. So next thing, cameras everywhere. I looked around, I thought maybe somebody famous had walked in. This is all for me, and I'm going, oh, goodness sake. So the next thing I get introduced to the manager, a Dutch guy, Hans van Balkom. So next thing we're shepherded into a wee room, and it's got 3 chairs on the stage, and then all the places for the reporters and the photographers. So we're getting a Chinese version of maybe Dougie Donnelly is interviewing me. On the first question, he said, the Chinese are quite direct, and he said, Jim, your rivals, Boulevard, they have just signed Derek Parlane. Are you a better player than him? I was just about to say, well, Derek Parlane, he's played for Scotland, he's played for Rangers, and well, you know, he's more experienced. I was just about to come out with this when the Dutch guy comes in and says, of course he is. I would not have signed him if not. And I go, oh no, what's happening here? So taken straight to the training ground after a 14-hour flight, and I had to do some running around, and my boots hadn't arrived, so I was kicking the football with just the socks, like, you know. So, and they've got a cutting. It's all in Chinese, but one of the Chinese lads at Sydney says, "Oh, you kick the ball with no boots, and you're like a monster because you have no teeth." But then it was, I think Pelly had said it last week, it was crazy. I never ever seen the brown envelopes, but
yeah. Somebody else that had no teeth either.
So we're what I got, I shared a flat with Duncan McKenzie, ex Everton, Anderlecht, Chelsea, and he's become a lifelong friend, and he's been up helping me with some clock stuff now and again, and he's I meet him now and again at Everton. He used to do the Everton hospitality, so he's what a player he was, absolutely fantastic. But there were some great players playing in that out there at the time. Jimmy Bone was out there. Had a good night out with Jimmy Bone. I'll tell you that story sometime. But there was Jimmy Bone. There was Alec Miller was there. He was manager of one of the teams. There was Dick Naninga, who scored for Holland in the World Cup final. Lots of guys that were either at the end of their career, still great players, or there was lads who were a bit like me, you know, maybe a wee bit lost and just looking for somewhere to go. And I really enjoyed it out there because of the heat. You trained at 8 o'clock in the morning and finished at 10. So we used to just get a taxi to the other side of the island, which is a bit like Magaluf, to be honest. So straight from training to Magaluf every day, it wasn't a bad life to have. So I did okay there. We stopped the club from being relegated, from being about 5 points behind everyone else. We ended up fairly safe. I think we had 8 games. We had 2 wins, 5 draws, and 1 defeat in the games when we were out there. So Duncan Mackenzie had been offered £20,000 back in, that was 1981, to go back out there to sign for the following season, but he'd made up his mind that was him finished. So I've got that on my CV as well. I finished his career because he stayed with me. So it was Duncan got offered that money, and I said to Duncan, "What do you think I should ask for?" And he says, "Well, you've done really well." He says, "Why don't you ask for half that?" So when I did, the Chinese guy laughed, and kept laughing. So I dug my heels in then. So I went away home without signing. And then when I was at home, the money was going into your bank every week. The money was really good. And it was going into your bank, then it stopped. So I phoned the guys down in England. He said, what's happened? So they folded the club completely. Because one of the clubs that got relegated, South China, it was like a Rangers and Celtic out there, were South China and Hong Kong Rangers. They were the 2 big clubs. And South China had got relegated. So they had to devise some sort of system to get them back up again. So they were probably big brown envelopes going about. And they decided our team just disappeared. But anyone who'd signed a contract, they got their money in a lump sum. Yeah, I hadn't signed, so I was at home. So next thing it was, I went from working 10 hours a week to I managed to get a job at MIG, and it was 7 12-hour shifts a week. So quite a difference. So, and then that's when Jock McDonald got in touch about me coming to play for Thistle. So I turned up for them one night and we were playing Clach at Grant Street Park. So played, scored, and Jock says, "I want you to sign." Told him what I was wanting. He says, "Our top players don't get that." And I thought, "I'll be honest with you, I don't care what anyone else gets. That's what I'm looking for." So he took it out of his pocket and gave it to me. And I was laughing with Charlie, saying Charlie saying he'd give him too much. But I never ever checked it. I just took it. You know, so maybe he gave me an extra 50 quid as well. So maybe that's how we fell out so often, myself and Jock after that. But Jock was some character, but if you stood up to him, and I stood up to him, what he got, I think what he got, he recognised that as well.
Jim, I've got to ask you about that remarkable Scottish Cup run that Inverness Thistle went on. I was at Kings Mills the night that they beat Kilmarnock, set up the tie at Parkhead. Talk us through that.
We were. That was in the second season, and I'd actually wasn't able to play because I'd back working and I wasn't making training, whatever. So I'd actually left the club, and then my sort of work allowed me to do a bit more training. So I was training with them, but I hadn't signed for them, and they had a few injury problems. So Rossi says, "Would you mind signing for us again, just to get us through the Scottish Cup situation?" So I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So they played Spartans, and then I signed. So I couldn't play in the replay because I hadn't signed prior to the first game. So they went down to Edinburgh and they beat Spartans, and they knew they were having a home tie against Kilmarnock. So we got the home game against Kilmarnock, and it was postponed because of frozen pitch at Kings Mills. And then we knew the winners of Inverness Thistle versus Kilmarnock were away to Celtic. in the next round, so we knew what the prize was. So we turned up at Kings Mills, and it was absolutely frozen. And I only had aluminium studs on, so I couldn't, and I couldn't get out because the crowd, a huge crowd there, so I couldn't get back to my house, which was only probably less than a mile from Kings Mills. So Big Brian Fraser, God rest his soul, he was there, and he had these sort of sneaker shoes on, and he was 9.5, and my feet are 11. So what I got, I played with his shoes on in that game. So I played with the shoes. He came to the match in, and my feet were absolutely killing me. But what a fantastic result that was for the Highland League. Thoroughly deserved. We were, it was 3-0. It could have been 5. It was such a dominant display we had that day over them.
I mentioned to Davy Milroy the other week when he was on that towards the end of the game, I think the last 5-10 minutes, the Kilmarnock fans in disgust were filing their way out of the Kings Mills, out the stadium, and they were throwing their scarves on the back of the goals, and you couldn't see the net for blue and white scarves. It was just solid.
Well, we went into town, and there was a guy sitting in one of the reflections, I think it was called at the time, a Kilmarnock fan sitting there on his own, and we were all obviously, and I got him to join us. I says, look, come and join us, we're going to join ourselves. And he gave me his scarf, and I've still got it. You know, I've got it upstairs, and in fact, I sorted it out, I've put it in another box now, so it's, I've got it here, but a fantastic memento of what was a brilliant result for the Highland League.
So then a trip to Parkhead, and for those of you who haven't seen it, it's on YouTube. I think you have to type in Celtic versus Inverness Thistle FC. I think you'll find it. And there was an opportunity. There was an opportunity to put the Jags up 1-0 early on. What happened there?
Yeah, well, there's no other excuse other than they missed it. No, I found my VHS of the game, and I sent it away to a guy, and he sent it back to me. I picked it up from him today. It's on a memory stick now. And he also did a DVD for me. And he says, Jim, I hope you don't mind. He says, but I put the picture on it, you missing the chance on the label. So thank you very much. But Roshi always tells me I cost him Europe. Because Celtic had won the double that year,
and just for the sake of the viewers' benefit, name some of the names that were in that Celtic lineup that day.
Well, I know all the players in that because I snaffled it. I'm a terrible person for saving things or whatever, so I was last in line in the dressing room, and it came round, and I just stuck it in my pocket. So I've got back then they gave the addresses where people lived and everything. So the McStays were on it, and they were obviously still at home. They still get the same address. There was Tom McAdam. There was Peter Latchford in goals. Tom McAdam. There was Davy Provan. God, what's his name? McGarvey. God. It's terrible. I'm sure my old age now coming in is Danny McGrain was there.
Of course, there was a famous incident with Danny McGrain in the game, was there not, involving Inverness Thistle Murdo Ackert?
Yeah, Murdy come on. Danny had caught Titchy Black round about the ribs. You know, it was one of Danny's lower tackles. And he caught him, and Murdo came running on, and Danny was leaning over Titchy to say, sorry for kicking you, know. And Murdy came and punched Danny McGrain in the ribs.
Ended up getting a stern talking to by the late George Smith, if I recall. Danny McGrain, I nutmegged him in that game, and he brought me down.
and it was a 100% free kick, and the referee shouted, "Play on." So I'm up and I'm racing after McGinlay up the park. I'm running, and what I got the Rossi, John McDonald are in the dugout. And Rossi starts shouting, "It's £1,500 a booking." He's shouting at me. "It's £1,500 a booking." I don't care. But no, what a night we had that night. We took over the Central Hotel. We had a few beers on the Friday night, if truth be known. But there was about 100 fans from Thistledown stayed in the hotel. The manager there was a Thistle, an Inverness lad, Thistle supporter. So he got in touch with the club. So everyone booked into the Central Hotel. We just had a hoolie on the Saturday night. It was brilliant.
Jim, I'm conscious of time, but I have got to ask you about your next move. Obviously, it was the biggest move of your career.
It was, yeah.
And you signed for Dave and
Rothes.
I's hometown team, Rothes.
Yeah, and that was the signing on talks. The decision to sign on for Rothes was because Johnny Mark, do you know Johnny Mark?
Yep.
John McDonald, a great friend of mine, hates a dram. Don't know how we get on together. But John had been playing for Rothes, and I wasn't playing for anyone. And he took 6 of the Rothes boys up to Inverness for a party, for a night out. And I had a party on my house that night, most Saturdays anyway. And they came along, and they were all saying, "Come on, sign for us, sign for us." So I got a bottle of vodka out, and I poured the whole bottle of vodka neat into a glass each for us all. And I said, "Right, if you can all down that, I'll sign for you." And the last boy, the boy that was left to do it, whether I would sign or not, Stevie King, who was Aberdeen S form at the time, and he put it down in about 2.5 seconds, and it came up in about 1.2 seconds. but it was deemed to have been down, so I had to honour it and go and play for Rothes.
And it was a remarkable season, and Rothes actually went on tour that year, Jim.
Yeah, we had an undefeated European tour, 2 games up in Shetland. We also won the team of the month at the end of that season, but that was possibly down to we knew where Rod Will drunk in Aldern, so we stopped the car on the Red Lion in Aldern on the way home, and we filled them with drink, and we got the team of the month. I think we deserved it actually, but we had to make sure. So, but up in Shetland, I think you were on that Shetland trip, were you?
Well, I can remember getting on the ferry in Aberdeen, and I can remember getting off the ferry in Aberdeen on the Monday morning, because it was a Sinclair. The ferry that actually took Aberdeen fans to Gothenburg, and we stayed on the boat the whole weekend. So, well, that's where we're sleeping quarters were. Some of us stayed in the boat all weekend. Some of us didn't, but we'll not go into that.
That was absolutely a trip and a half, and we were drunk getting on the boat in Aberdeen.
And you were in for a tough time, Jim. When we arrived, our bus arrived in Aberdeen, you guys were already there, and you were wearing one of these Daktari safari hats. And you straight away we were in trouble. And like I say, it was quite a remarkable bit. My everlasting memory is of a Derek Thompson goal after a pretty heavy night out on a Saturday night, and he kicked this. I think it might have even been a corner, was it? He hit this thing, and the wind caught it and landed the butt in it, and they all thought, everybody up there thought this was a wonder strike. Of course, Derek didn't enlighten them to the fact that he didn't mean it.
Well, I think we were getting beaten 2-1 with about a minute ago or so by the select on the Sunday, and I took a long throw in and right into the box, and it bounced, and it was going over the goalie. And and nobody else had touched it. If he hadn't palmed it into the net, then it wouldn't have been a goal. So if he'd left it, you know, it was no goal. So I think that was a equaliser. So
Yeah.
I'm not
Happy
clear.
memories, Jim. Jim, we'll come back to you in a wee while
Brilliant.
for a moment. Thanks for that. Guys,
Thank
I'm
you.
conscious of time, but back to you, Dave.
John, 1992, it's the start of, well, I suppose you have signed for a club that you become synonymous with. You went from John McGinley to Super John McGinley, basically overnight because of your goal-scoring exploits and giant killing exploits. It's difficult to sum up that 5 years, but what a time it was for you, John.
Best time of my life, there's no doubt about that. It was, and it's continued, if I'm honest. You know, moving to Bolton, and the people here have embraced me as a family, and everyone else really got behind us, and they have done ever since, really. So it's been a fantastic move from all around. But it was a start. How would you put it? Well, obviously Bruce had left Millwall, Bruce Rea, and he had come back in for me to take me to Bolton. But it took them until the end of September the 30th, for them to raise the money. Not awash, but pretty much in a poor position at the time. Not a lot of money. We were sitting in the bottom reaches of League One, and like I said, they got the money together at the end of September. I was packed. The stuff was in the car, ready to go for weeks and weeks. And when I got the phone call, I was up that road like a shot. Knew what I was coming to. I'd played just down the road at Bury before, so I knew the area. But coming to play for Bruce obviously was the big draw again. And Ian McNeil was up here as well. Ian was installed as a chief scout. So coming back to play for Bruce and Ian, that was the big bonus for me.
Of course, Burnden Park, it was a real football ground, John, wasn't it?
Oh, I mean, an historical football ground. Proper old ground, going back to Sir Nat Lofthouse days, getting crowds of 50, 60,000 in there. It was just a tremendous ground, with a great atmosphere, a ground probably that people didn't like to come and play in, because the crowd got right behind you. It was actually built, it was raised, and there was parts of the ground where if you came off the side, you went down about 4 or 5 feet into the gravel as such at the sidelines, in the old days, the old fullbacks used to put a few over the side, back in the Sir Nat's days. But no, just a great place, a proper football place.
You formed a great partnership with another Scot during your time there, Andy Walker, ex-Celtic.
Yes, yeah. I mean, when I came and signed for the club, Andy was already here. We struck up a great partnership quite quickly. Wasn't worked on, it just happened, really. And, myself and Andy scored quite a few goals. Were successful together. And even ongoing since then, I mean, the amount of players that came down from Scotland to play, Owen Coyle as well, came down, great part, big mix of part of lining, so we had quite a good Scottish contingent and a good Scottish dressing.
You scored many goals in your career there, John, but maybe none as important as the goal that knocked Liverpool out of the FA Cup.
Aye, I mean, that night we had played. We played at home on a Sunday, and it was live on TV, and Bolton was one of the first grounds to have undersoil heating. But that week, mysteriously, the heating had failed, and on the Sunday the ground was frozen. I mean, it was frozen stiff. It was like an ice rink. And Graham Souness was the manager at the time of Liverpool. Turned up, he was going berserk. Looking at the state of the pitch was on. And to be honest, the game, if it hadn't been live on TV, it wouldn't have went ahead. But we went out there, we went 2-0 up actually in the game in the first half, and in the second half Liverpool came back in. Ian Rush got an equaliser, and there was an own goal as well. So 2-2 took us back to Anfield for the replay, and probably it was the best thing ever happened, because I think we got more credit obviously for going to Anfield and winning than we would have done at home. But going to Anfield on that Tuesday night, it was just for me personally, I mean, Kenny Dalglish was my idol. He was my king growing up. You know, he was the one I looked up to, Kenny Dalglish. And to be able to go into Anfield, touch the sign, and we were running about like wee kids, if I'm honest with you. You know what I mean? We were just so excited and just, it was kind of just happy to be there sort of thing, you know. And little did we know how well we would play. And, you know, won the game 2-0. Myself and Andy Walker got the goals. And probably the biggest thing that lies with me from that game would have been right at the end. We were down celebrating. We had 9,500 supporters through that night. And we were down behind the goal celebrating with the supporters. And somebody tapped us on the shoulder, turned round, and the whole cop had stayed. And as we all turned round, all the team walked back towards the halfway line, the cop all started applauding us. You know, and I think that was a huge mark of respect, because as a lower league team, you know, I think we went there and probably expected to try and kick them off the park, but we didn't. We played football. And on the night, we just out-footballed them, really, and got the result we deserved. And again, appreciation of the cop. I mean, I don't think there's any better, you know, mark for anybody, really, the respect they showed us by clapping us off the park. So it was a night we never forget.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a very special place to play, and as you say, especially in front of the cop. Was that one of your favourite grounds, John?
Aye, I mean, again, it was special because probably it was the first time I played there, and again, growing up and having the dreams and everything else, you never actually thought that would happen. You know what I mean? But that night, I felt for Bolton, because we had been in the doldrums as a football club for a long time, and I think that night was the sort of the start of us clawing our way back, if that's the right term to use.
Yeah. And in 1993, you clawed your way back, you earned promotion, and it was a penalty, your penalty, that took the club into the higher league at Preston.
Yeah, I mean, we Preston we needed to win to stay up. We needed to win to go up, and it was a nothing game, if I'm honest. It was like they had 11 men behind the ball for the whole game. We attacked after attack. We couldn't do anything on the day. We had chances galore, couldn't put anything away, and we got an innocuous penalty, really. And to this day, I still don't think it was a penalty, but we got it, and that was the difference. You know, Preston went down, we got promotion, and that's football, isn't it, I suppose?
Right. The following year, John, you scored 33 goals. That was a great achievement.
Yeah, I think it was that year. I think Sir Nat Lofthouse and Andy Walker, I think the three of us share 33 goals. Andy had scored 33 a couple of seasons before that. So to get the 33 goals and equal the record with them, that was something, you know, because again, Sir Nat was a man when we came to the football club. You know, the guy was just an absolute, still is to this day, you know, 38 goals and 33 appearances for England. Phenomenal, you know, but such a gentleman, you know, he was there every day at the ground. You would come in, and if you were having a bad time, he'd put an arm round you, take you for a little walk round the ground, and just keep encouraging you, you know, and talking to somebody like that, it was never about them, it was always about you. Mm-hmm. You know, and he was there helping with it, with advice, and just helping you all the time, you know. But a pleasure and an honour, really, for that man to take the time out to help you. Yeah.
And then 2 years later, you gained promotion. You were on the side, again promotion to the Promised Land, the Premiership.
Yeah, that was something else as well, because we went up through the playoffs, and that year we got to the final of the League Cup against Liverpool. So in April we played at Wembley, and Liverpool beat us 2-1 in the cup final. Steve McManaman scored the 2 goals for Liverpool, and that was the difference between the two teams. Mm-hmm. It was quite an even game apart from him. He had a couple of pieces of brilliance, scored 2 great goals, and that won the trophy for them. But, you know, through the disappointment, I think it stood us in good stead, because, you know, less than a couple of months later, we were back at Wembley for the playoff final against Reading. Mm-hmm. And we had gone into it probably not in the best of form, to be honest. And Reading came out, and for the first probably 30 minutes or so, they were like Brazil. I mean, we couldn't get within a yard of them. Mm-hmm. And they had quickly gone 2 goals up after about 12 or 13 minutes. And they got awarded a penalty. probably about 28, 29 minutes into the game, which would have made it 3-0. But Keith Brannigan made a fantastic save. And that was a turning point in the game. Because after that save, even though they were 2-0 up, you felt their heads were down a little. And we came back into the game and finished the half strongly, although going into half-time 2-0 down. Come out in the second half and played some exceptional football. I mean, the guys really took their chances. We got into extra time, and I think once we got to extra time, I think there was only one winner because, you know, Bruce's teams were always really fit. We always finished the game really strongly, and, you know, gone on and won the final. So that was it. And like you said, it was Premier League. Again, a dream, because it's like, you know, all of a sudden it becomes a norm. You're going to play Arsenal, you're going to play Man United, you're going to all these stadiums you've only ever seen on the television. So it was good, you know, and I think from the point of view, it wasn't a great season. We got relegated the following season, but we didn't have the finances, and we didn't have, you know, it's a very difficult one, you know. We had come from nothing, basically, and probably still a League One club, as in the terms of players, etc. And yet going into the Premier League, it was so tough for us. We had made a few additions, but we didn't spend money probably that we should have. And I felt that season we probably gave teams just too much respect. You know, we were in awe of teams, you know, too often.
Another special moment, John, you spoke about how, you know, Bundon Park was a real shrine of football with us on that Lofthouse connection, things like that. And you scored the last goals that was ever scored at Bundon Park before the move to the Reebok.
Yeah, that was in the 96-97 season, where, you know, the big expert. We knew it was the last year at the ground. We knew everything went right. You know, we had been relegated the season before, so to bounce back so quickly, and we basically romped the league. You know, we did well. We romped the league. We had won the league by April. By early April, we had won the league. And it was just one of them seasons, really. Everything sort of came to a head in the last game there. It was a home against Charlton. It was live on Sky. We went a goal down. We went into half-time a goal down, but the second half we came out and we scored. Alan Thompson scored a screamer with his left foot. Big Jerry Taggart got a goal, and I was very fortunate to probably get the last two goals late in the game, and we won the game 4-1, you know. But again, the memories there was so much history at that ground, and that was the last game played on it. You know, to see they paraded all the old ex-players around the ground, etc., you know, before the game, and there was tears shed. It meant so much, you know. They had a disaster there, and 33 people died in the stadium, you know, at one point as well, you know, after a game against Stoke. And so to see all these old players there, and tears were shed and everything else, it meant so much to them. So to finish the game on the right note and to get that win was really important. And it was icing on the cake for us, really, for that season.
The following season, a memorable game must have been Bolton Wanderers 6, Tottenham Hotspur 1, hat-trick for John McGinlay.
Aye, it was a Coca-Cola Cup game, that was, and it was at home. They had a good side as well at the time. You know, they had Sol Campbell at the back. Colin Calderwood actually played at the back that night as well for them, you know, so that was a partnership. Teddy Sheringham up front for them. So they had a good side out. Certainly wasn't a make-up side. They were going well at the time, but it was one of them nights where things went right for us. Again, a cold, rainy Tuesday night home game, probably turning up at a ground that they didn't fancy. We had gone out with something to prove and the right attitude, and the underdogs always seem to do well against, you know, the teams that should win. If their attitude isn't right, that's the difference.
Yeah. But you came to international football probably fairly late in your career, John, and you'll always remembered from your 13 caps for one goal in particular. Talk us through that moment at Ibrox Stadium when you scored the goal that took Scotland to the World Cup in 1998 in France.
Well, again, it was a big game. It was Sweden were a good side at that time, a really good side. think it was Tom Boyd. It was at the back. I think I had the ball. He knocked a long pass through. Darren Jackson had dummied it, and I'd got the right side of the defender, got the right, and Ravelli, the goalkeeper, had come out and really made my mind up, and I would manage to side foot the ball into the corner. And I think that was about probably the 8th or 9th minute in the game. And I think that was it then, because if it wasn't for Jim Leighton on that night, Jim Leighton made some unbelievable saves that day. He really did. And the boys at the back were getting blocks and tackles in and last ditch efforts, you know. Henrik Larsson was on the bench for them at that time, you know what I mean? But they had a right good side. I think Dallin was a big player for them. But Jim came up big that day, made saves with his face, he made saves with his body. Colin Henry, big Braveheart, was making tackles all over the place, you know, and great result. Great, fantastic result for us, and it was just one of them games where we rode our luck at times, but managed to get the result.
What a journey that was, John. Yeah.
Say again, sorry?
I said, what a journey, all the way from Claggin Park to scoring the goal that takes your country to the World Cup final.
Well, again, dreams, because I used to go down to all the Scotland games. I used to go down the bus from Fort William to the Scotland games, and to actually be able to, you know, to pull that shirt on and to get a cap is just something else. And, you know, when you think back, I came from a little village outside Fort William called Cool, and Duncan Shearer lived probably about 3/4 of a mile the other side of the village. And we both made our debuts on the same night against Austria. And in fact, I started the game and I scored, I came off and Duncan replaced me. So that was on the same night. So when you think of a little village, probably about 3,000 people, and the two of us made our debut for Scotland on the same night, and there was no two prouder people, honestly.
I can imagine that. And a final question to you, John. Things are not quite so good at the moment for Bolton Wanderers, but there are people at the club that can make things happen, I'm sure, and you're one of them. You're a great ambassador for the club, and I'm sure Bolton Wanderers will return at some point and gain promotion.
Yes, I mean, I think we've got as low as we can get. We've just appointed a new manager. We've made some new signings as well, and there's an excitement about the place. You know, I think I've not been as excited for a good while at the club, you know, because we've been on a downward spiral for a long time. But we've got owners then that want to take the club forward, and you know, we've had to strip the club right back and start to rebuild it again. You know, and it's, again, you hate to see the likes of Bury and where they've ended up. And I'm just glad it wasn't our football club in the same way, you know, because we've got such a history at Bolton, and, you know, to be able to try and rebuild it now and to get it back to where it should be, well, it's going to be a long process, but things are looking good and on the way up.
Wonderful, wonderful memories, John. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Back to you, Martin.
Thanks, guys. Well, we're going to get Dave's heat scratch in a minute or two, but not before. We'll go back to Derek. Second half of your career and a second league title.
Yeah, so I think, you know, that's the 2006-2007 season. Yeah, and kind of fell in place that season. Actually, at this point I'd moved to play at the back. Actually, I'd been a striker for, I guess, 10 years, Keith, and then I think I'd broken Charlie Barber's record a number of years before. I think it was maybe year 2000, but I was losing a bit of pace, and Marty decided to put me at the back, and you know, I actually find it fairly easy to switch, to be honest. So yeah, we hadn't quite managed to sustain a league sort of programme in the years before that, since winning it in 99-2000. But 06-07, we started the season well. We won the Shield, won Aberdeenshire Shield, and we got beaten in the qualifying cup final, which was a sore one. If phrase, but it was the last ever qualifying cup final. We got beat 2-1. That was a real sore one. But then we went and signed Mark Perry and Martin Wood just at the turn of the year again. So again, a bit like when we won the league previously, we got a real boost from that for the second half of the season, and went on quite a good run. Had all the kind of momentum really. We were kind of toe to toe with Locos. They were kind of in the driving seat before then, but again, a pivotal game up actually against Fraserburgh again, but that was up at the Broch. We managed to score a late winner. I think Barry Summers scored a late winner, and then another final day kind of drama. We were playing Nairn at home. Locos were playing Cove. Locos just had to win the league, essentially. We managed to win fairly comfortably 3-0 at Nairn. And Locos had went 1 up, I think. Can't remember who scored for them, but our game had finished again. We were standing in the middle of Kenneth Park again. Sandy Stable's probably on the phone again. And Cove had scored. I think Cove scored maybe a few minutes after Locos. A guy called Jake Strachan, who had been on Keith's books, I think, as a youngster. So, and it fizzled out a 1-1 draw, and that meant we won the league again and on goal difference. So I think that to quickly get the trophy, I think the trophy maybe was in Inverurie. So we had a bit of a wait to get the trophy up to Keith, but again, fantastic celebrations. There wasn't many of the team there that won it in 2000. I think myself and Darren, obviously Marty, the manager. I'm not sure there was too many others. Maybe I'm doing others a bit of a disservice, but fantastic to win it again. And then in those days, we had the Highland League Cup final the following week, so we celebrated winning the league that weekend. Then we had to go and play Buckie in the Highland League Cup final the following weekend up at Banff again, and we managed to beat them. So 5-0, Cammy scored a hat-trick. He was just sort of coming of age and taking over my place really up front. So a very successful season. We 3 trophies in the bag, could have been 4, but just one of those seasons that everyone sort of clicked really.
Derek, 17 seasons at one club. I'm sure Jim and John both will applaud that as an achievement. It's quite remarkable, especially in modern football terms, players getting that level of service. But it's not uncommon in the Highland League. There's a lot of clubs who tend to have 1 or 2 players who will put in that level of service. To win 2 league titles is phenomenal. But it meant such a lot to players and management. But for the likes of Sandy Stables and the late Alec Rutherford as well, who sadly passed away just the other week, it's a phenomenal time. It was a phenomenal time for these guys, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first and foremost, these guys are fans of the team. They're wanting the team to do well, and Sandy and Alec, as you mentioned, and Charlie, and those guys that have been there for so long, and they just love to see the team doing well, and they love to see the guys enjoying themselves, and we were fortunate enough to have quite a successful time in my 17 years. We won. I think we were in 17 or 18 finals. I think we only won 9, but never mind. Plus 2 leagues. So, it was a very successful time for the club. Lots of, like you say, lots of players during that time had testimonials. I think Keith's had maybe 10, 12 players even that have had a testimonial. We wouldn't want to name the names, so I'll probably miss somebody out, but we've all had testimonials granted by the club, and it just shows you that Keith was a club that people wanted to stay and play for, and that was probably a lot to do with the guys and like Sandy and like the management, and obviously the senior players and bringing young players on. So You know, I think you know, stopped. Well, I mean, I say 17 seasons. My last season, I only really played in August. I was stuck on 198 goals, I think, before the start of that season. Then I scored, I think, very early in August, and then I managed to score my 200 in late August against the locals, and it was a winner as well, so it was even better. But but you know, I was delighted. You know, it was a personal thing for me. Speaking about celebrations, you know, the club knew how much it meant to me. The players knew how much it meant to me. So it was great to finally get that 200. You know, when I moved to the back, I was on about 190, so it took me a while. It took 6 or 7 seasons to get that last 10. But and then unfortunately, you know, as happens in football, the following week, I get injured. I ruptured my ACL and my lateral collateral ligament in my knee. So, you know, that took the decision out of my hands. Really, that was going to be my final season. It was kind of made the decision for me. I could have got an op, but there's no way. I mean, I was 37. There was no way I was going to come back and do the rehab and things like that. So, unfortunately, that meant that time was up. But yeah, fantastic club, and you know, they've obviously not been maybe quite as successful in the last few years, but I'm sure the guys there, the guys that I played with, Dino and Muggsy and Jamie, you know, I think they've done a sterling job in the last couple of years. So, you know, yes, wish them all the best.
And off the pitch itself, I was up at County Park just a couple of weeks ago. The pitch is looking phenomenal, as are most grounds, I think, in the Highland League. John, I don't think you'd recognise the standard of the playing surface in the Highland League these days. Absolutely remarkable. And indeed, Fort William are currently carrying out extensive drainage. It's only been needed since about, well, when did you sign for them? So great to see that there are some benefits of the lockdown. Clubs are getting the facilities in order. But Keith, I have to say, is looking magnificent. A new regime at Keith. I made the comment when I was up to my daughter who was with me, and I said it's a completely new regime. Sadly, the Norman Browns and the Sandy Stables and the Alex Rutherfords are no longer there. But the club's in good hands, Dave, I would say, and they've got great ambition, and I'm sure that team and the pitch will match that ambition at some point, and good days will come back again at Kynoch Park. Gents, I'm very conscious of time. I'm going to cut short a wee bit, go to Dave. Dave, there has been much criticism in recent weeks of Dave's head scratcher being too easy, or is it just we've got a very intelligent audience?
Yeah, I'm sure we've got a very intelligent audience. And just to touch on what you said about Kynoch Park, I had a wee look around McKeswick Park yesterday. Drainage work also being carried out at Rothes, and it looks magnificent, Martin. So roll on the football season whenever it comes.
Yes, indeed.
But the heat scratcher, yeah, a couple of people said it was far too easy. But this one, I don't even know the answer to. I know some of the answer, but hopefully somebody will keep us even more informed. John McGinlay, our esteemed guest tonight, made a career in professional football. He was a full-time footballer. He mentioned a friend who also became a footballer from the same area. But can you name me at least 2 other sons of Lochaber who have gone on to become full-time footballers? There are at least 2. I can think of 3. So give me as many as you can. Sons of Lochaber who went on to become full-time footballers.
Now keep your powder dry, Jim. We want the viewers to answer this one on Twitter. Dave, how do they do that? Just
go to Twitter @UpTheDooney and put your answer on there. Martin Stewart tried to give us an answer on one of my huge scratchers right during the programme. I said, Martin, please stop. John, you'll know quite a few names. There are at least 3 more I can think of. There may be even more. The more names we get, the better. @UpTheDooney with your answers for next week.
Brilliant. Can I thank John McGinlay, Derek Nicol, Jimmy Oliver? You've been phenomenal guests. A wee bit, as usual, of teething problems initially, getting on here. But we got there in the end. Really appreciate you giving up your time and joining us tonight. And hopefully the viewers will find it of great interest. Next week, we are joined by an ex-referee who took finger wagging to a whole new level. We're joined by an ex-Highland League player with a Dutch-sounding name who stays in Denmark these days. And one of you guys will know this guy pretty well. We will have an ex-Highland League player who played for the Dons and has got a very apt Aberdeen FC name. As always, we ask you to stay safe, and we'll see you next Sunday. Good night.